Good afternoon. I'm Robert White, council member at large and chair of the Committee on Housing. Today is Friday, April 9th, 2024. The time is now 12:04 p.m. and I'm calling to order this budget oversight hearing on the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions, or OANC, and the Office on Returning Citizens Affairs, also known as MORCA or ORCA. I have said before, this year's budget requires us to take a new approach. For too long, as government revenues have continued to grow, the district has not done enough to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of our programs. As a result, the government is both not solving enough problems for our residents and wasting money. For example, last week, I pointed out several areas within the Department of Human Services budget where it seems like we are rolling back relatively low-cost supports for our lowest income residents, only to spend more money after residents become unstable and end up displaced or in shelter. As part of my work on improving the focus and effectiveness of our agencies, I've both proposed broader budget accountability measures and asked each agency in our committee to develop 3 specific, measurable, achievable, time-bound goals. Clarifying and coming to agreement on those goals will be a significant part of all of our budget hearings because each agency can't be effective if it's not clear both to them and to residents what their top priorities are, how they measure success, and how well they are meeting their metrics. We'll start today with the OANC, which was established to provide technical, administrative, and financial reporting assistance to advisory neighborhood commissions. One of my driving focuses in our oversight of ANCs has been to centralize services and technology that all ANCs need. This has the potential to both reduce costs, avoiding 46 separate ANCs buying the same things, and to make the jobs of our ANCs easier as well. As a result of that effort, and with the support of this committee, the OANC has grown and played an increasing role in providing training, technical support, accessibility services, and expertise. For years, as I've had oversight over the OANC, ANC commissioners would come and ask for systems or supports. We would authorize and fund those things, and they wouldn't materialize despite oversight hearing after oversight hearing. After too many years of stalled programs and understandably frustrated commissioners, we brought on Director Bass and agreed that the OANC would focus on getting prior mandates implemented and to develop a strategic plan to direct the office's future so that we could start to modernize the role of ANC in a strategic and coordinated way. I want ANCs to be able to do their jobs better and better for the OANC, and I want OANC to be better at helping to support their evolution. I am pleased to see the OANC rolling out new supports and services for ANCs and continuing to make progress on that strategic plan. Of course, that has not been without debate, but that vigorous discussion is a feature, not a bug, of our ANCs. Most importantly, we need to continue to see progress. We discussed much of that work during the performance oversight hearing. Today, I intend to focus on a few specific things. First, we'll discuss the top 3 goals the agency shared with the committee. Second, we'll discuss the extent to which the proposed budget will allow the OANC to advance its strategic plan. And third, we will discuss the expected impact of the mayor's proposed budget sweep of over $350,000 from the OANC in the current fiscal year. Historically, the council has not cut the mayor's executive office budget, and the mayor has not cut the legislative branch's budget. So this kind of reduction of a legislative branch office was surprising, and we have to figure out how to deal with it. Our second agency today will be MORCA, which, along with the Commission on Reentry and Returning Citizens Affairs, was formed to advise the mayor on issues concerning the reintegration of returning citizens. Their mission includes advocating for returning citizens through policy recommendations and facilitating housing, workforce development, and other programs to support successful reentry. They also conduct community events and connect people with subsidies and resources in other agencies. I want to acknowledge that we are meeting today during Second Chance Month. We know the importance of providing returning citizens with supports as they transition home to help them rebuild their lives and contribute to safer communities. That's why my office has worked for years to create new protections and services for returning citizens through legislation and funding at MORCA. When I came to the council, MORCA had a much smaller budget and an FTE count of 8. Now, today, they are a $3 million agency with 17 FTEs. As with all other agencies, I've asked ORCA to prepare its top 3 goals for the next year to review in today's budget hearing, and we'll discuss those. ORCA's first goal is to increase partnerships with governmental and community-based organizations to improve access to transportation services, food and clothing access for returning citizens. ORCA's second goal is to enhance housing opportunities for returning citizens by facilitating the housing of 30 returning citizens during fiscal year 2024. Finally, ORCA plans to facilitate the placement of 40 returning citizens into training programs and 40 into gainful employment by the end of the fiscal year. Unfortunately, we will also have to address an ongoing string of serious, persistent allegations that appear to reflect significant mismanagement that has impacted both programming for returning citizens and the well-being of ORCA staff. I've provided all the allegations and evidence received by this committee to the mayor, the Office of the Inspector General, the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, and others where appropriate to ensure the issues brought to this committee's attention are handled appropriately. I've also asked the mayor to initiate her own review of operations at ORCA. For the purpose of this hearing, my goal is not to establish any factual findings regarding the long list of allegations we've received. My goal is to ensure that ORCA employees are safe, able to complete their duties, and protected from illegal retaliation while investigations proceed. Before turning to our agencies, I'm going to call up our public witnesses, which includes several advisory neighborhood commissioners. We've posted a witness list to the council's hearing management system. If you indicated in our sign-up form that you plan to participate virtually, but you're here in person instead, please let our team know on the table at the side of the dais. When I call up witnesses who are joining us over Zoom, the committee staff will promote you from attendee status to panelist status. You'll see a pop-up on your screen, and you'll need to accept promotion to join the panel. You'll drop out of the Zoom session momentarily, and when you come back in, you'll have the ability to unmute yourself. Public witnesses will have 4 minutes to testify, and advisory neighborhood commissioners will have 5 minutes. If you could not sign up to testify, that's okay. Feel free to submit your testimony online at lims.dccouncil.gov/hearings. That's lims.dccouncil.gov/hearings. The record for this hearing will be held open for 1 week from today until the close of business on Tuesday, April 16th at 5:30 p.m. Feel free to reach out to my office about your thoughts on the budget throughout the process. Now let me call up our panel of public witnesses. Lynn Rim, I have not seen you. Commissioner Edward Borrego, ANC 5B01. Commissioner Paula Edwards, ANC 4A01. Commissioner Trupti Patel, Vice Chair of ANC 2A03. Andrea Adams. Those are our public witnesses. I don't think any are here in person, so we will see who's joined us online. Commissioner Borrego, ANC 5B01, you are up first and you can begin your testimony.
Thank you. Chairperson White and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Edward Borrego, and I am the commissioner from Single Member District 5B01, and I am also the treasurer of Commission 5B, both positions I have held since January 2023. I'm here today to speak about the treasurer role and requests I hope this committee will consider for the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. Advisory Neighborhood Commissioners are nonpartisan elected volunteers aiming to serve their communities on a wide range of issues and be their neighborhood's official voice in advising the district government. Serving as treasurer is an ancillary duty and not one that I would argue any constituent of mine directly cares about. However, it is both critical to the commission as well as an enormous time burden pulling me away from more meaningful community work. Last year, I spent at least 65 hours on treasurer-related duties, including applying to the ANC Security Fund, scrubbing Commission 5B's accounts to correct issues dating back to 2017, and reimbursing past commissioners from expenses dating back to 2020. While 65 hours may not sound like a lot, according to the AmeriCorps Current Population Survey Civic Engagement and Volunteering Supplement from 2021, volunteers in DC, which is 5th in the nation for the rate of volunteerism, individually contribute an average of 81.77 hours total per year. Personally, I estimate I volunteered at least 300 hours on commissioner work last year, meaning treasurer work consumed about 20%. This year is shaping up similarly. It is no wonder the role of treasurer is widely known as the worst officer position on a commission. Procedurally, this role also functions poorly. Let me ask the members of this committee, when you run out of printer ink in your offices, how hard is it to get more? If I receive an email today from one of my fellow 5B commissioners requesting new printer cartridges, as treasurer, can I just move forward and use Commission 5B's debit card and buy online the lowest cost ink cartridges shipping to our PO box for approximately $48? Commission 5B approved its FY24 budget on October 18th, 2023 and allocated $1,550 to office supplies, equipment, and printing. So it is authorized, right? No. Per OANC guidance, individual debt card expenditures must be first explicitly approved by the Commission into the public record and include the vendor name, amount, and purpose. Therefore, if I wish to use the debit card, I must wait until the Commission's next noticed public meeting and put forth a motion. What about going to the store in person and using a check, assuming they still take checks? Another member of the Commission with signing authority must co-sign the check. What do most commissioners do? We buy it ourselves with our own money and then work to get reimbursed. Reimbursement, however, has risks, and a commissioner may go months or even years before getting paid back. Remember, I just mentioned reimbursing a past commissioner for expenses 3 years later. I myself am currently owed $311.85 by Commission 5B because our PO box had to be renewed in February, and we are, still as of today, not admitted to the ANC Security Fund, so I am unable to initiate the process to reimburse. Per the Quick Payment Act of 1984, if DC does not make proper payment to duly submitted invoices, interest is charged at a rate of 1% per month. Do commissioners get to charge interest when we essentially loan money to the government? Of course not. Why does this system of financial management and procurement make any sense? Why are the volunteer elected officials in DC required to do all this administrative work versus paid elected officials like the mayor and yourselves? Therefore, while I do appreciate OANC developing their strategic plan, I do not believe it goes far enough. The mission of OANC should be to provide all the support and ancillary services commissions need to enable individual commissioners to focus their volunteerism on the direct needs of their constituents and enable you, council members, as well as the mayor, to clearly hear the voice of the neighborhood advising you in your important work. Specifically, I ask you to consider positioning OANC to operate ANC bank accounts on behalf of commissions while still requiring the treasurer to oversee and approve activity. Enable OANC to procure goods and services on behalf of a commission and handle paperwork such as applying to the Technical Assistance Fund and Security Fund. I do not see the benefit to commissions or their independence to annually require 46 commissions to update 46 different bank accounts and make 46 separate applications to the ANC Security Fund or separate surety bond, in addition to all the execution and procurement work. To bring this about, the DC Code should be made clearer regarding this expectation and grant the authorities necessary to fulfill it. Additionally, OANC's budget should be reviewed and increased. There are 46 commissions and 345 commissioners. The mayor has proposed an FY25 operating budget for OANC of $2,388,621, a 5.7% decrease from FY24 approved. There are 13 council members, and the Office of the Secretary to the Council has requested an FY24 operating budget of $6,701,000, a 6.7% increase from FY24 approved. This means OANC in total gets roughly $52,000 in support of each commission, and the Office of the Secretary gets roughly $515,000 in support of each individual council member. This is not enough to support volunteers in the work we are elected to do. Therefore, I ask this committee to make changes to OANC to maximize the value of volunteerism the DC government receives. Thank you. I welcome any questions you have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next will be Commissioner Trupti Patel, Vice Chair of ANC 2A03.
Good morning, Councilmember White. Thank you for hosting this hearing so that our comments may be entered for the permanent record. And before I go into my testimony, I want to attach myself to all of Commissioner Borrego's comments because I am a former treasurer and I understand his pain. So I do want to attach myself to everything he said. So my name is Trupti Patel, and I'm a third-term ANC Commissioner representing Single-Member District 2A03, the historic Foggy Bottom. The new budget released by Mayor Bowser is a complete disappointment on all fronts, as it's cruel to our vulnerable Black and Brown residents, as once again the city always tries to put everything on their backs, while allowing business and developers to enrich themselves. This budget didn't slash any funding for for the Office Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. I thought that was the case, but my colleague before me has stated that they actually got lowered. It still sends the message that they're not centering the important and vital role of advisory neighborhood commissioners play in local government. While I testified before you last year, I was hopeful that that the OANC would be better at serving ANCs. Please don't misunderstand me. This is not a criticism of OANC nor Director Kent Bays. What I need you to know is that it is still not enough. It's deeply unfair to handicap Director Bays and OANC to do way more than they should be tasked to do, especially when they're still not able to keep pace with what ANCs are now doing now and given the proper budget to scratch the surface of what ANCs need. Commissioners left echoing that they didn't feel supported by OANC and their ANC colleagues whom they served with. The population of DC has exploded, and with that, so has the workload for ANCs. Being the senior most ANC on 2A, ANC 2A is leading me down the path of being incredibly burned out as I literally spend nearly 25 to 30 hours a week doing a volunteer position. I have 3 absentee commissioners who get away with it, as one of them stated boldly. It's not like OANC or the DC Council can do anything to me. The workload and the pressure to execute the priorities for ANC 2A have not been sustainable for a while, but many of my colleagues do not understand the workings of what to do and in fact find my passing of resolutions and testifying before the DC Council as a source of consternation. It's left me exposed to bullying and harassment from not only colleagues, but members of the public as well. Turns out being effective in my refusal to kowtow and tolerating rude behavior. It is ugly, deeply pervasive, and toxic, and it's taking a toll on my mental health. And it's going on 4 years of it on ANC 2A. And I'll have to come back to safeguard the priority that is the Aston, as there is a small, vicious minority of residents who wish to denigrate and humiliate our vulnerable neighbors. I've testified in numerous hearings about this issue. And I'm hitting the point of being over it as it's gotten to the point of being ridiculous. To the point for which I'm attaching for the Commissioner Causey carbon copied on a missive to CM Brooke Pinto of Ward 2. I'm fine with not being liked, etc., but the level of disdain to where it's requested that a sitting member of the council is asked to interfere in an ANC officer election, along with asking for a role to be possibly stripped from for fundamental philosophical differences. In conclusion, for trying to ensure that residents have their humanity recognized before the system. The institutions that are the ANC need to be revamped, otherwise it will collapse unto itself. And so that's the conclusion of my formal testimony. But one of the reasons why I really wanted to testify today is ANC 2A lost its executive director, Peter Sacco. So we don't have essentially anyone helping us out administratively. And, you know, a lot of us are already pulling 20 plus hours a week just trying to maintain the workload of ANC 2A and to handle the administrative duties on top of running an ANC commission has left a lot of us extremely burned out, exhausted, and just as I say, is a lot of things that can be centralized and should be centralized. And I'm realizing and discovering with the loss of our very powerful former executive director, Peter Sacco, this is what leads to a lot of ANC commissioners stepping down and not coming back. Like they don't feel supported, they don't feel valued, and they don't feel respected. And, the mayor not recognizing or being astute enough to realize like ANCs are playing more to all of our faces. And so, I'm hoping that this oversight hearing, I am empowering you to advocate on our behalf, Councilmember White, to elevate and amplify the importance of our roles. So thank you for hosting this hearing, and I'm more than happy to answer questions for you. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And our final public witness, Andrea Adams.
Good afternoon. I am Andrea Adams, and I was asked to provide an update on a contract with the University of the District of Columbia and ORCA. I am the principal investigator of the Memorandum of Understanding, and this project is to support a comprehensive needs assessment of the children of incarcerated parents in the District of Columbia. We've completed our focus group sessions and are in the process of analyzing feedback. Once our data analysis is complete and we have integrated the participant focus group information into our research, we will be presenting a draft strategic plan to ORCA and then vetting that plan through stakeholders. We've committed approximately 75% of the funds allocated for this project and will be completing the billing in the next 30 to 60 days. We expect to be under budget. On behalf of the University of the District of Columbia and Director Carey and his dedicated staff, we appreciate your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, for Commissioner Borrego and Commissioner Patel, I appreciate your testimonies. More than that, I appreciate your service. To the point both of you made, these are difficult and demanding roles, and they do require a significant amount of time, which is why I think it is incumbent on other parts of government to give ANCs, usually through the OANC, the resources they need to do their jobs. I have increased over just the last 2 years the OANC budget by $1 million and for staff to try to address some of the recurring issues. To use your quote, Commissioner Patel, it is still not enough. I recognize that. Given the need for substantial growth of OANC and the evolving roles of ANC commissioners, that is the reason I insisted that we develop a comprehensive plan so that it becomes clear with the input of commissioners where OANC is going and what additional supports commissioners need and how we strategically build those supports over time. So that is my goal, to keep building. I've increased the ANC allotments for the first time, I think it was in a decade. We've added staff and money to OANC. More needs to be done. Commissioner Borrego, I'm with you. I do think one of the last positions I would take in this city is treasurer of ANC Commission. It is a hard role. It does not have enough resources. It's confusing, and we've got to figure this out. I don't know the easy answer because while the issues you're raising are real and seemingly common sense issues, to use your printer ink example, I am also aware of issues of fraud in other commissions and trying to figure out what is the system that minimizes fraud and maximizes efficiency is what we need for our commissioners. So Commissioner Borrego, as you've made, can you talk to me about what recommendations you've made to OANC and what the response has been to this point?
Sure. So I sent feedback similar to the testimony I gave today to OANC based on their published draft strategic plan. And that so far has been kind of it in terms of the extent of the treasurer role. Other than that, of course, I've asked for support on various issues as they've come up, assistance with working through ANC Security Fund issues as they've been moving to their accounting software, issues with balancing our books. So I do want to say, I do believe OANC is trying to do their best, and I do deeply appreciate OANC Director Bass putting forth a strategic plan. I just feel that they should try to position themselves to do more, and I would personally believe a way to help balance the fraud concerns would be to handle OANC financial management and procurement more similarly to how it's done for other government agencies. My understanding is OANC has a P card. They probably work through some office, either in the council or on the mayor's side in the executive branch for handling a lot of their financial management and administration. And those controls are well known and well used throughout a lot of layers of government. I assume they probably have a dollar limit to what they can buy in the P card. I assume that those P card transactions are scrutinized, and if certain codes come up, they get inquiries and they have to justify purchases. So I think a lot of the ways that this could be managed already exist. The difference is commissions right now are seen as needing to be exceptionally independent when it comes to their finances. And so instead, we are the ones setting up the bank account. We're the ones changing the signatures on the account. We are the ones doing all of the work. And then only occasionally are there controls on kind of the back end to stop things. It's more lots of controls in the front end to prevent things from happening. And so that's why for over a quarter this year, ANC 5B can't even spend any money because we're not part of the security fund. And once we're able to spend that money, I can basically not really use the debit card unless we plan ahead and know exactly what we're going to spend it on, exactly how much we're going to spend, and who we're going to spend it with. And so for ancillary purchases like printer cartridges, it's basically impossible unless we want to plan that out in advance with our budget or at other times. So I just think the way to at least resolve some of the financial management and procurement things, in my opinion, would be to centralize it and manage it through the same processes that I assume the council uses as well as the executive branch of the DC government.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I'll get the director's perspective on that. I have some guesses. One is that they will need more staff, which means we would have to figure out a way to fund it. But we have been building the capacity of OANC. So I appreciate the recommendation. I think you are right. Being a treasurer for commissions is really difficult, and it's a concern that we hear repeatedly. So it is a challenge that we've got to work together to figure out and make sense of. So thank you for being with us, Commissioner. Commissioner Patel, I appreciate your insightful testimony. I had not realized that Peter Sacco had left the executive director role. That is very much a burden to the commission because he knew his way around these issues, had a lot of experience. I also do hear you on the current resources being more, but not enough. So we will keep pushing on that and on the what sounds to be still ongoing bullying and harassment. This is something that should not happen. Most of this is already against the law. And what's not against the law is generally protected by free speech. That said, we need our government to operate functionally and maturely. And I am continue to be frustrated about the concerns I hear from ANC 2A. So I'll continue to work with you and OANC to figure out how we can be of best support. I don't know that there's another law we can pass because the allegations are things that are already, as I said, illegal or protected under the Constitution. But we've got to figure out how to reduce this level of harassment and make commissioners feel safer and more welcome. So thank you very much for your testimony. Andrea Adams with UDC, thank you for the work that you're doing and for the update. I missed a key part of your testimony on the memorandum for the comprehensive needs assessment of children of incarcerated parents. I think you said when that would be completed. Could you tell me again, please?
In September of this year,
Okay.
2024.
Okay, that's the I don't mean this to be critical. This is just kind of how things work, but why does the memorandum take so long?
So it's not that the memorandum has taken a long time. It's just the process of conducting focus groups, analyzing the data, drafting the strategic plan. We present the strategic plan to ORCA leadership, and then we vet it through stakeholders. So it's just a process of going through to make sure that the information that you receive is not just a research project, but it is vetted by both participants and stakeholders. And we want it to be comprehensive.
Okay, so what we will get the report in September.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I wasn't understanding. I
Yeah, the
apologize. Okay,
report's in September, but we've been working diligently on it.
yes.
And, we will probably have some really good recommendations from ORCA in terms of data collection, how best to take the next steps, because this is a comprehensive review, but there are a lot of, I'll admit, there are a lot of data holes that
Yeah.
I'm going to recommend that we figure out a way to supplement that, fix that, so that you're getting this information on a regular basis so that you can make decisions in an ongoing basis and not just do a snapshot.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate, I'm looking forward to receiving this. It is really important and impactful information. That's why I wrote the bill to get this report from the recommendation from the Commission on Reentry and Returning Citizens Affairs. So I appreciate your work and diligence. I am excited to get this report, and I think it's going to help put a focus on an important but often unrecognized issue that can really have a number of impacts down the road. And so the better we get at preventing negative impacts, the better we're serving this city and our young people and families. So thank you very much for your work and for the work of the University of the District of Columbia.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to let our witnesses go. Thank you all for being with us today. And I want to bring up Lynn Rim, who was the first public witness I called, was not in the room at the time. So you can. Good afternoon. And if you would hit the button on your microphone, perfect.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to start off with just saying that my name is Lynn Rim. I'm a community activist, active here in DC, also as a DC resident, also as a housing, a federal choice voucher holder administered through DC Housing. So I have firsthand knowledge of how the basic infrastructure works with the federal housing voucher program, as well as the DC housing administration of how it's administrated, rules and regulations, and also how the domiciles or buildings are the requirements, inspections, and the knowledge of how the building owners have to interact with the DC government and how that process goes, as well as the knowledge of how, as a community activist, how there's a lot of issues that the general public doesn't know in between all the different factors, and then also activists that push laws through ballot initiatives and put candidates on the ballot through ballot initiatives. And I raised money, and I'm active in the community, and I have several other initiatives that I'm trying to do in housing, criminal reform. And what I just wanted to bring up today is that as far as on the oversight side, I would encourage the council to ask housing, maybe just send them a basic inquiry and just ask them what their general process is when it comes to housing and how to evaluate who has housing, why they have it, and how long they have it. And like, I know that you have to certify, you're supposed to certify every 2 years, but in my personal case, I had to certify within a 12-month period instead of a 24-month period, like I'm currently going through right now. And they kind of like sent me a letter saying that they're going to stop paying the landlord with less than 30 days notice. And I already recertified less than 12 months ago. It's supposed to be every 24 months. It seems like some of the people are more focused on just getting the workload off of their desk, and they're not even paying attention to the file. If they would have looked in the file, they would have seen that I've been sending emails and calling and not getting responses. from their agency. And they would also seen that I recertified by moving automatically. When any of the clients move, it's the same recertification. You validate who's living there, the income, and where they're living. That's all you have to do for DC and for the federal government. That's just one little area. Another element is I think that we have to have the clients take ownership. I have been working for the most part since I was 15 years old, and some of the people that are in the program don't have that, and they didn't have that background. And I think that we need to work with DOS to lower some of our costs with some of the people like myself that just need to be placed with workable income and that's sustainable. And some of the people like myself, like I have a lot of experience, a lot of different certifications, but some people don't have that. Some people just need to learn trades and have the work ethic reestablished, as well as understand that their housing is something that they have to take ownership into, and encourage the clients to work with the landlords, or maybe have some kind of work program or something where they can help beautify their own projects where they live at, where you can lower the cost the government pays and you can lower the damage to the building, and as make people want to not commit crimes in their neighborhood because they'll feel like they're part of the building. Instead of paying a lot of money, you can have people clean up their own buildings if they have a cleaning program. You can have returning citizens come back and reinitiate themselves and stop like just claiming a neighborhood. You can claim the neighborhood and help clean up your neighborhood, help clean up your mother's apartment, help clean up your building, keep people from putting graffiti on your walls. It's so much work that can be done that could lower the cost of operating these buildings, lowering the liability of the government, lowering our taxes, and raising up our tax base. Every returning citizen, every person on housing that has the opportunity to work and has sustainable work that can go on for 12 months or more will have an equity share in our government, in our community, and in our society that will go on for multiple generations. And then it's just about educational assets and mental health assets coming in to stabilize some of the trauma that we have to deal with as people in urban centers in the largest, most beautiful capital and beautiful country that has ever existed to this time. Okay. And that's the greatest thing, having people understand who they are, and what we have here. People don't believe in the system because they can't believe in themselves. And we just need to reevaluate how we talk to people. I feel so sorry for people in the DC government that has to hear these irate people calling them and cussing them out because they don't have the love of a mother or father, and they've been victims of the drug war like myself that had parents who were on drugs. And a lot of us have faced abuse, and we never had the love that people had that have been to college and have stable homes. Anyways, I don't want to overwhelm you. And thank you very much. You guys can check me out on We the People 202. Also, if you ever want to interact with me, I got a lot of things going on that are helpful to the public, and I'm working with all the governments in the area.
I appreciate it, Mr. Rim. I appreciate your testimony, you being here with us. I do think it is always a helpful reminder to people working in government that a lot of times folks that they're working with, didn't have many of the benefits that others had growing up. And it does result in some frustration and more difficulties. Then for people on the other side, to another point that you made, people in government are dealing with folks who are angry all day, and that wears on them too. So we've all got to be very mindful of folks on the other side. So I appreciate that. I am not sure why you've been asked to recertify twice within a year. I won't get into the particular details here, but if you need our help with it, we'll help. Thank you for being with us.
All right, thank you.
With that, we're going to move to our first government witness, starting with Director Kent Bass of the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. Before you sit down and get comfortable, as you know, it is the custom of our committee to put our government witnesses under oath. If you would raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Housing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you so much. Welcome, Director. You can begin your testimony.
Thank you, Councilmember. Good afternoon, Councilmember White and members of the Committee on Housing. Thank you for your continued support of the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions and the work that we do in support of our 46 commissions and 345 elected commissioners across the District of Columbia, who do their work at the grassroots level, often being the most accessible and only elected official that many of them know in person. Through your support, we have undertaken projects to expand shared services, both technologically and professionally, including the addition of a general counsel and a land use attorney to our staff during this year, both of whom are behind me and present today. Advisory neighborhood commissions are composed of residents elected from the district's neighborhoods. The commissions are independent bodies that advise district government on policy issues affecting their particular neighborhoods. I am pleased to see that the ANCs are funded in FY25 at the same level as FY24 at $916,000. In accordance with the Home Rule Charter, funding to ANCs is distributed on a per capita basis. Based on the last census, ANCs receive $1.33 per neighborhood resident, which I think is an incredible value for the amount of work we get out of our commissioners. The proposed FY25 funding amount is in alignment with the funding amount that the OANC requested in FY23 and again in FY24. The OANC is responsible for providing technical, administrative, and analytical support to ANCs and ANC commissioners. During the past year, we've made investments in expanding staffing and services to our ANCs. These include hiring the aforementioned general counsel and land use attorney, as well as an admin assistant, and positions were created by the previous council that also include a training professional. We are currently in the recruitment of the training professional. Believe it or not, no rest for me. We are starting the interviews tomorrow. We think it is a very important position. And once filled, we will be at our full staffing level of 9.5 FTEs. As I said, these positions and looking at the budget projections are fully funded. So that is reassuring. Where I do have concern is the sweep of the $353,520 in non-lapsing technical assistant and support funds. The reduction is in the FY25 is 5.7%. So instead of the $2,532.71, it goes to $2,388,621. And while this latter reduction represents a loss of one-time funding in FY24 of $143,450,000, those were funds that were dedicated last year to the government delivery tool, the website project, and the Zoom accounts for ANCs. These are going to be ongoing services and either need to be funded within the budget or funded in FY25 with one-time funding. They could be covered from future funds disallowed from ANCs through the Technical Support and Assistance Fund, or they could be funded from the ANC allotments directly, since many of these services are services that prior to now, the commissions were doing on a case-by-case basis through the budgets that have been allotted to them. While the Technical Support and Assistance Fund may be a good short-term option in FY25, considering that the Committee on Housing granted the OANC great flexibility in how to use those funds last year, it is neither a sustainable revenue stream nor is it originally as intended for that fund to function. Rather, the fund's purpose was to provide resources to ANCs upon their request for assistance with their technical duties and equipment, or to provide support for expert assistance when they need expert assistance beyond what they typically need on a month-by-month basis. We do not see the Technical Assistance and Assistance Fund as a long-term solution, as it is refreshed from funds disallowed from ANC quarterly financial reports when disallowances need to be made. And the OANC takes its duty seriously to work with the ANCs to improve compliance with QFR requirements and to ensure that every ANC gets its full annual allotment whenever possible. To this end, we are currently working on draft legislation that we will submit to the committee for review to better balance OANC's roles of providing technical and financial support to the ANCs while also performing the QFR review and compliance role, which came to the OANC in 2017. Most notably, we will be submitting some recommended changes for the committee to consider in the areas of measures to cure technical errors in the signature or memo field of an ANC when a check does not have like two signatures or misses a note. We think it's really important that when no fraud has been found to occur, there needs to be an opportunity to cure and keep the ANC whole. We are looking at adjustments to improve the grant process. We know grants has been something of significant consternation over the last year, and we're trying to look for ways to recommend changes to the language that achieve the goals of ANC grants without undue burden. We are also looking at, or we've been in discussion about the potential to eliminate the security fund, which has been mentioned in previous testimony today. Based on our outreach to the Office of Risk Management, it has been determined that it is not necessary, provided that appropriate financial controls are in place. And it is the security fund process is outside of OANC's role. So there's very limited opportunity for us to, shall we say, address some of the concerns that have been raised thus far. And lastly, we are looking at to see if there's any adjustments that need to be made to the debit card process and possibly the inclusion of ACH transactions. We know that those are things that have been brought to our attention over the past year. The OANC also agrees with the committee that training is an important component of retaining good commissioners, and we acknowledge the need to expand training services and formats. To this end, we are in the process of hiring a staff member, as I previously said. This includes the goal of developing on-demand training options, a priority identified by this committee and council members in the past. In addition to the funding devoted to a full-time trainer, we need to consider the costs associated with standing up and developing on-demand training. Some sources estimate that the cost of training a new employee can be about $1,242 per employee, with e-learning being about half. If that model were used, that would mean that training 345 commissioners every 2 years could be a little over $214,000. But fortunately, we have training materials already. We have the handbook, we have the financial guides. And so I think our initial response would be to see how we can convert our traditional paper in-person bound training into more of an on-demand, perhaps segmented course, right? So that's something we would look at, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be free. We also have to consider what platform those recordings live on, and if there's a possibility to either expand a platform that maybe DCHR is currently using, or would we have to go a different route? So those are things that we need to look at. In addition to training, this past year, we published our first strategic plan. It's still in draft phase, but it's significantly far along where it's useful. This long-term vision anticipates new OANC activities and ANC supports and services. Many of these will not incur additional funding, but others will. Our primary concern leading up to the release of the FY25 budget was that a significant reduction in funding for the OANC could significantly prevent us from implementing the much anticipated plan and vision. We are grateful that this did not occur and believe that many of our first and second year priorities are met by the proposed budget, with the notable exception of building out a public database for community benefit agreements. Now that we have a land use attorney on hand, we've already begun the conversation with what that would look like. We met with OCTO yesterday to see what a database would look like, and it could be up to 65,000, but definitely no more than 65,000. And that's a conversation we're going to continue with OCTO to look at the functional requirements. And I believe some of that could be licensing, but what we will do is we will continue to work with OCTO, and we will give you an updated number as those numbers are updated. But they are looking at that now. Against this financial background and our strategic plan, the following were the top 3 goals for FY25 as requested by the council, right, and this committee. Our first goal is to expand ANC access to shared technologies. We think that this is one of our strengths and one of the lowest hanging, some of the most benefits we can get for our efforts. We're still working on the website project. Octo has gotten back to us since the performance oversight hearing that they're now looking at an end of FY24, early FY25 launch for the ANC website, or excuse me, the OANC website, and that it would be a staged release of the ANC websites. As they indicated to me, it's impossible to launch, or they feel it's difficult to launch 46 websites all at the same time. There could be bugs that need to be worked through. So I've proposed some dates and numbers as far as how many of the websites we can get launched by certain dates. Those are very conservative numbers. I would hope that we can be ahead of them, but I also know that SMART goals have to be achievable. So I'm trying to stay in my achievable lane. As far as rolling out the Zoom accounts, we've already have a handful of commissions that are on Zoom. We're working with Octo to get the documentation together to walk all commissions through the process. But I am taking this opportunity to where we see that a commission is having difficulty and doesn't really have the luxury of waiting. I'm reaching out on a case-by-case basis and advancing a few of them ahead of our deadline or our timetable. So Zoom, websites, and hybrid meeting technology, I would like to increase our capacity by 2 kits this next year if possible. I think that we're going to see greater reliance on commissions going back to in-person meeting or hybrid meeting in some capacity as we get through 2025. Right now, with the legislation in place, there are still many commissions that meet virtually and virtually only. I think that we have noticed that when there's an in-person option, people do participate in person. So that's something we will need to work through. Our second goal is to improve financial management, and I have outlined some targets and numbers to go along with that, which we can discuss. I think, again, here, there's a great opportunity for us to improve or tighten up our process with reviewing QFRs, maybe working with the commissions to get the documents in on time. While it's difficult for us to, let's say we don't manage ANCs per se, and so when they give us documents, we don't have much control over that. However, we do have control over when we give them feedback and what they're missing. And so I think we can tighten that up, especially with the new QFR software. We can put things like distributing the first quarter allotments and the review of the quarters. We can get them on a more rigid timeline with dates of review to be completed and set those expectations so that even if the feedback from the OANC is that we don't have the documents, so it's at this point, everything is disallowed, that clearly will tell the commission what documents are needed so they can get them to us and cure that document and get their funds released. The last thing that I will focus on before I close is our third goal, which is expanding training and launching an on-demand training options. As I mentioned, we are starting to interview our trainer position tomorrow. And I think that's a huge opportunity for us to start migrating and developing our traditional course materials and expanding course materials in an on-demand environment. I do not know at this time if we can perhaps expand access to a previously existing program within house or if we'd have to purchase one separately. But I do know that if we're going to talk about training, just having it available on the website, that's kind of a base, but it shouldn't be where we're operating. Currently, we have been recording our on-site training or our sessions and making those available through a YouTube channel. That's nice, but all we can really tell is how many people have viewed it. We don't know if the people viewing it are commissioners. We don't know if they're not commissioners. We don't know if they've learned anything. We don't know if they've successfully adopted any of those things. If we're going to talk about on-demand training, I think we need to think about the way that training is done when a new hire is, right? You should be able to take a course. There should be an assessment. You should be able to get a certificate showing that you've completed the course, but which is reasonable for retention. And we should be able to know who took it, right? So, and I think that the other aspect that would be really beneficial, let's say, if we developed a course on related to the treasurer's duties, since that's come up earlier today. If there were an opportunity to cure something that was going on with a commission, one of those requirements could be that you take this course, make sure that you've completed the course. We can put the certificate along with our documentation, and that could go a long way with like saying, yes, there's been education, it's been completed, and now we have the documentation we need to say that this situation has been cured and we can release the funds. So along with that, I know I have a tendency to be a little long-winded, and I apologize for that. But I am available for any and all questions you may have.
I appreciate it, Director. Lots of work happening. And while there's still legitimate frustrations from commissioners, they are hard jobs and they still need more resources, many fewer complaints. So I'm grateful to you and your team for the things that you're doing and your commitment to keep working to improve things. And really want to thank you for your top 3 goals and sending those to us. And I want to work through those first. Your first goal is to equitably support ANC access to websites, Zoom technology, and hybrid meeting equipment. And you've provided 4 measures to advance that goal. First one, you're proposing for that goal is to provide Zoom access to 20 ANCs by May 1st and all 46 ANCs by June 1st. Do any ANCs currently have Zoom enterprise licenses provided by OANC?
Yes, I believe we have about 8 commissions. The reason we're only at about 8 is what we were doing with those is we were treating them as a pilot. We wanted to see if there were any problems with migrating the accounts. We wanted to make sure that any schedules, meetings the links weren't breaking. We wanted to make sure that those commissions still had access to the recordings, because the recordings are important. I consider them public documents. And we wanted to make sure that the commissions weren't having any problems with accessing the account, because it also changes it to single sign-on. So one of the things that we're doing with the Zoom accounts is we're making sure they're tied to the email address that each commission has. As I'd say, is kind of a generic office. We don't want it tied to a commissioner, because if it has single sign-on, then that means everyone has access, not just to the Zoom, but also to one commissioner's email communications. And I don't think that's a good practice. But every commission does have a basic office account. And so that's where we want it. Also, we were using these as we were recording the process as we were working with the commissioners, so that Octo can put together a step-by-step guide for the other commissions when they join.
Okay. And for other commissions, those that don't have the enterprise licenses right now, how are they managing virtual meetings?
Well, I believe there might be a small handful, perhaps fewer than 6, that are still on WebEx, but I think there were a few issues with WebEx earlier this year, and we used that as an opportunity to migrate some of those over. Like, oh, well, you're a perfect test case. We'll solve a problem with WebEx and give you access to the enterprise license. But the other commissions are using Zoom licenses that the commission has paid for, or that's in the individual commissioner's name where they've been reimbursed. It does bring up an interesting issue, and one that we have to address per each commission is, because of this, some of the commissions are not even set up as having the user ID being an anc.dc.gov email address. Some of them are Gmail, and so that all needs to.
That does all need to get reined in. It's hard to reach commissioners consistently.
But there's a way to do it, and the commissions that have migrated over seem actually pretty pleased. It's been pretty seamless, and the added benefit to many of them that they love is once it migrates over, any funds that they've spent for their account, depending upon the plan they're on, gets refunded on a prorated amount, right? So if they have an annual subscription, because this is going through Octo and going through our budget, the funding stream moves over to the OANC account, and we could have a discussion on whether that's the right place for it. But as far as the individual, it kind of, it's a date certain where before that date, the commission paid for it. After that date, it goes here and they get their money back.
So once all commissions have the enterprise licenses, and that's going to be about $23,000, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So right now, some commissions are paying for Zoom and other virtual licenses out of their commission funds. After all of them have the enterprise licenses, they OANC will carry that cost, or will they carry some of that?
At this point, it's all going to be in the OANC carrying that cost because of how the MOU is. I think that we could have a conversation on whether or not that should be taken out of the 916, since prior, that's where it's all been coming from, right? So that's a very legitimate conversation to have, is where should it be coming from? But as far as centralizing the purchase, it first and foremost has to hit our budget before we decide what to do with it.
Okay. And you currently have the money in your budget to cover that?
In FY25, I'd say we definitely do. Again, like I've said in my testimony, it's not my intention to use technical assistance funds for this. That is where it was kind of earmarked for in this past year. But in working with OCFO and telling them what our needs were, we definitely put it in the budget for FY25 when we're like that. We kind of gave them our fixed costs when we're going through our budget lines to make sure that we had the funding for it. And that doesn't seem to have been hit.
I see. Okay. All right. For the context of commissioners or others who are tuning in now but haven't been tuning in for 4 or 5 years, OANC now has a technical assistance budget, a staff position for that, land use attorney and general counsel, which the office did not have even a couple of years ago. And in addition to some of the other things that Director Bass has mentioned. So all that to just make sure commissioners, even if they're feeling like they need more, I do want them to understand things are moving.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good one. This is an issue, Director, we were hearing concerns about from commissioners, and it's something you all have been working on to centralize the licenses. Not everybody has the technical expertise, the time to figure this out, and it gets very confusing. So I appreciate that, getting all the commissions access to websites, Zoom technology, hybrid meeting equipment, and providing Zoom access to all 46 ANCs by June 1st, I think is a good, clear, specific goal. So I appreciate that. The second and third measure for the technology goal is to launch the new OANC website by November 2024. I'm excited. And to phase in the new ANC websites by January 1st, 2025, and June 1st, 2025, which I'm also excited about because these ANC websites are, woefully outdated. Could you, and most commissions that have websites, at least it's my guess that many do their own website, which also creates confusion, because when I'm looking for information about a commission, I don't know if I'm looking for the ANC website, for their individual website that they created. It gets confusing. So can you give us an update on your engagement with ANCs and Octo, which you mentioned some of this in your testimony. Octo's on board, they're moving, these are the timelines that they believe they can meet.
Yeah, based on my recent conversations with Octo, and including a couple of days after the performance hearing, they told me that their projection for the OANC website launch was going to be late fall, early winter. So end of FY '24, early FY '25. I know that they are working on it. They've assigned us a project manager to work through the wireframe. So we now have a dedicated person to work with in addition to the higher level project team. So that's great. I know that they are working on it. Like I said, we've talked about how we would need to phase in some of the commissions which need to follow the main site. To your point, it's very confusing, I think, for the average person to try to figure out what's going on with a commission.
Mhm.
If I were to say how many commissions don't have websites, just by doing a Google search, you'd think it was 3 because you can't find a trace for 3 of the 46.
Mm.
However, there's still a handful of commissions beyond that where the website has not been updated for 3 years. I
Yeah.
know of one example where a commission just says, yeah, we're aware it's there. We don't know how to access it. We don't know how to use it. We've just abandoned it.
Yeah.
So again, that's not helpful. So I think that in a phased approach, based on the engagement I've had with commissions, and I'll say, ANC, I'll say ANC 8A because I know that they're very excited about this and they've asked if they can be in one of the first. And they are one that falls in this category of a website that is currently non-functioning.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do a phased approach, I would prioritize those without functioning websites or without websites to be
Yeah.
at the early end, because the commissions that have highly developed websites that are functional are more reluctant to change to a website that might be provided.
Yeah.
So clearly that's a longer conversation. And I think it's going to be a more successful conversation if they can see what's been rolled out for the commissions before them.
Yeah. And this matters. Sometimes there are residents who are just, saying, how do I get involved? I want to get involved in my ANC commission. Who's my ANC commissioner? How do I get involved? When are meetings? People are looking for this kind of basic information all the time. Last week, I had a constituent reach out to me in a panic, trying to figure out the relevant ANC because ANC support was needed for a particular grant. And this constituent didn't know how to reach the ANC. So there's some real issues, and sometimes these are urgent and time-sensitive issues. So I'm excited to see this progress. I hope commissions will get on board with the standardized website. There has to be consistency and ease of access across the board. What have ANC said are most important to them for their websites?
Well, I'd have to look at it. About a year ago, I think in July of last year, I did a survey of all the ANCs, and I believe we had about 43 of the 46 respond, which I thought was pretty good. And in that survey, we asked them, like, what do you use your current website for? What documents do you consider to be important? I would be happy to forward that to you as a follow-up to this so that you could look at it. But what we see is, many commissions use it to host their documents. That's where they want to put their minutes. It's important that people be able to find their minutes. So I think there's core document access that needs to occur. That said, it's also important that people be able to know what's the calendar for the meetings? How do I join a meeting? If it's virtual, how do I get to that meeting? How do I contact a commissioner? Believe it or not all websites have a feature to collect feedback if you have a concern. They might list the commissioners and their email addresses, but some commissions really enjoy having the feature of submit a concern because constituents don't always know who their commissioner is. They just know who the ANC is. And so they wouldn't know who to talk to and they don't want to reach out to the wrong one, which I find odd. I've never shied away from reaching out to anyone. But I get it. Some people are like that. And so we need to have some flexibility for that feedback.
And I think your testimony suggested a cost of $65,000 to develop the website. If I remember, that's it per year?
The 65 is for the licensing per year.
Okay.
Yes. And that's the number I'm using in this because we're talking about FY25.
Okay. And is there, funding in your current budget that could meet this need?
I will say FY 24 is, I want to say it's pretty good, but I know I should never say that.
Okay, well, I mean, we won't do anything without working with you. We want to make sure you can meet these costs, essentially. So, your final measure to meet the technology goal is to strategically distribute 3 of your hybrid kits to locations around the district by November 1st of this year, 2024, and to provide 2 more kits, as you mentioned in your testimony, by June 1st, 2025. At the performance oversight hearing, we heard some feedback that the kits were too hard to use. Could you talk about how ANCs are trained when using the kits?
Sure, we do have a step-by-step guide that we can send to them, and for their first couple of setups, we're happy to, like, I've gone personally, Ronald Gaithard on my staff has gone. For instance, tonight, 8C is going to use a kit for the first time, or not tonight, tomorrow. And Ronald Gaithard will go there to assist them in setting up and talking it through. I'm really excited about 8C using it because they meet in the RISE Center. We're able to store one at the RISE Center to make sure that it's easy for them. So yeah, I will say they can be somewhat cumbersome, and that's why we want to strategically distribute them so that people have, commissions have access to them. The way we've been approaching this is the commissions that have the ability and the inclination to learn how to use them. That's fantastic. We do know that, like some commissions like 3,4G, they've struggled a little bit with putting them together. And so we've had to get boots on the ground up there more than once to support them because we're not going to leave a commission unsupported. But we also know some commissions, one of the many purposes of why they get annual allotments is to hire part-time staff. That is an option, like something that I've thought would be a win-win for everybody is, and I don't say this to demean people like myself being over 50, but I noticed younger people tend to be very good with technology compared to when I came up. I think that the amount of expertise needed to set up a kit is, a high school student even could do it. I see it as a great opportunity for just hiring out of the local community for a couple of hours a week. And maybe that's something that, we could engage in a little bit more. But
So somebody from the community could maybe work with your office to learn how to use it, and the commission could pay them to be the point person?
Yeah, that would be a perfect model.
What's been the reception? So you mentioned one of the kids living at the RISE Center. Commissions would be able to go pick it up and bring it to their meeting location if it's different than where it's stored?
Well, the way I've been working it right now is where we've been able to essentially park a kit. We've made that it's I'll say temporary long-term home because we still have 4 kits that don't have homes. 3 of them are in this building, and if you and your staff or the other council members ever want to see it, we'd be happy to set it up and demonstrate it for you. What we've been doing for the other ones, because moving it around is a bit of a burden, as I've been doing that. And that's why we've set up a process where we have the commissions, we've asked the commissions to submit a form telling us that they want to reserve a kit, and then we've calendared all those meetings and when we need the kits. And what we can do is that gives us the opportunity to, if you have 2 or 3 meetings on the same night and they all want to use it, we can deliver those kits in advance to make sure that they're on site, and then we can just send the staff to help them if they need the help.
Okay.
So it's a scheduling, but that's why additional kits reduce that need.
And what's been the reception from other agencies when you've asked them to store the kits and make space available for either storing them or for the ANC meetings to be held there?
Well, for instance, 3,4G and 8C, we really haven't had much of a response from the agencies responsible for those buildings because they have dedicated spaces for the ANCs. So the ANCs have been storing them in their offices. The library has been an excellent partner for the kits stored at MLK. We did have to sign an MOU saying that if something should happen, we know you're not responsible, and there's no reason why they would be. It's in a locked room. The only people touching it is the commission. And we have a set, one of the ones down the hall is destined to be delivered to Deanwood. So we've already got that kind of negotiated. We've worked with the DGS staff and the commission on that.
Okay. So it's easier if commissions meet where the hybrid equipment is. Have you heard from ANCs about their level of support for having their hybrid meetings outside of their own ANC boundaries?
I have not. I think we will see some of that, but I don't know, again, there's one stored at the Mount Pleasant Library, and so 1D uses it every month. 1A could schedule time to use that, and they have not. And I don't know what the resistance is. I've mentioned it to them a couple of times, and sometimes it's, well, yeah, it's difficult to schedule the meeting space over there. And that could be legitimate. Libraries are busy places. I will say that when I think, and I go to Ward 1 because I live in Ward 1, so I kind of pay attention to some of the machinations of those and the meeting schedules of those commissions a little bit more. I do note that 1B, which is U Street, and 1E, which is Georgia Avenue, have both met at the same location on a couple of times, which is the DC Housing Finance Authority.
Yeah.
That's not in 1E. So there's an opportunity where multiple commissions, or at least two commissions, are using the same facility.
And how many kits do we have so far?
We currently have 8.
8, and then there'll be 2 more. And that'll be $23,000 for both kits.
I want to make sure that I'm not being hamstrung, but the kits are about $10,000 a piece.
Okay. And are there viable alternatives to the kits?
Well, there might be. For instance, the commission, I believe it's 8F, meets at DDOT, in a conference room at DDOT. The thing that I want to explore, I've asked the commission to provide me a contact, and I've not yet seen it, or maybe it's an email I've missed and I want to follow up. There is some technology in that conference room to begin with. So what I would like to see is, if I can have a conversation with whoever operates the technology at DDOT, I'd like to say, how do we build off of what you already have in that space? Clearly, that wouldn't require a full kit. The Zoom license is already provided. You've already got the computer screen. What more is needed? And it might be much less.
Okay. Let me move to your second main goal for the year, which is to reduce disallowances of ANC grants and improve timeliness of quarterly financial reports. You're proposing reviewing 80% of grant applications before ANCs vote on the grants by next year. Can you talk about how this process currently works for grant applications?
Sure. So traditionally, while the statute says that all grants are supposed to be submitted to the OANC at the same time as they're submitted to the ANC, that wasn't happening. And the code also said that grants are supposed to be submitted on a form that we supply, and there wasn't one available on our website, or one that seemed to be in keeping with current changes or updated changes to the code. So to move us in that direction, we created a form, we've distributed it to the commissions. We've mentioned in a couple of times that the applications are to be submitted to us. We covered it in our chair and treasurer training several weeks ago, and the form itself is clear that it has to go to us and the commissions. So it's some of that's going to be education that we have to continually remind the commissions until they get used to the process that this is the form you're supposed to use. And if you follow the instructions, because it's not just the form, there's a page of instructions at the beginning. It tells you where to send it. And we have seen an increase, I think a noticeable increase in grant applications that are coming to us at first submission. And that really helps.
But do you know roughly what percentage of grant applications are coming to you now before submission?
That we do not. I'd be happy to look into it and see. The difficulty with answering that question is if a grant application is submitted only to the commission, the only time we're going to find out about it is when it eventually hits us and go, oh, this one should have come to us.
I see. Okay. No need for an exact, if you don't have it, then I don't think we need that. And so the reason ANCs aren't engaging OANC earlier right now is generally just knowledge and practice.
Historically, I think, and a good example is there have been a couple of ANCs that over the last couple of months have been having internal conversations about we need to revamp our grant process, and they are having those discussions. And there are certain decisions that are truly the commission's, like what grants they accept, which ones they want to consider. Those are completely within the purview of the ANC. Like not everything that meets the public purpose test is necessarily something that the commission may want to fund.
Yeah.
But we do want to get we do want to be a little bit more forthright with what a good process is. That's why, one of the things I put in there on my goals is we should be standing up, especially with a new trainer, we should be having at least twice a year grants workshops. Like what does a grant look like? What are some of the pitfalls? What questions should be asked? You should be asking your applicants to submit. And I think one of the biggest pieces that is constantly missed, and I know I emphasized this during the chair and treasurer training, is frequently the piece of information that we really need that people just omit is what is the benefit to the commission area?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just tell us what the benefit is, we've made ourselves available. I know Denise Wichter on my staff has made herself available to have conversations with commissioners and explain. And the thing I'm really excited about is when we do get the applications early, we do not take the approach of yes or no. We actually look for opportunities to say, as written, this is not fundable. However, if you could make these changes,
Yeah.
that would meet the public purpose test, because that's why we want them early, is we want
Right.
to help the commission be able to release the money.
I think that's how the process should work. So I'm glad you're doing that, and hopefully that becomes a routine for commissions. You also want to reduce ANC grant disallowances to no more than 10%. And the strategies you've listed to get to this goal include training, prior review, and legislative changes. Are there any other strategies that you have in mind to assist ANCs with grants?
At the top of my head, those seem to be the ones that are going to get us the closest. There may be other things that come up as we start to have the workshops. Clearly, I see everything as a continuum. We don't come up with a process to say, okay, we've solved the problem. We're never going to go back and revisit it. Even with some of the processes and procedures that I developed a year ago, as things come up, situations that we hadn't anticipated, those are opportunities to go back and provide clarifications.
And what percentage of ANC grants are currently being disallowed?
Well, I believe that in reviewing the ones that came to Denise last year, and we may have included this in our performance oversight, I believe 24 of the 50, I remember those numbers correctly, 24 of the 50 were disallowed that she reviewed. And some of those were issued prior to her coming on board and prior to us changing our process. To me, that's an extremely high percent.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and not always, I think everybody issued those grants with the best of intentions.
Right.
Just, I don't like I just don't, that's just a difficult number to have. So it spurred us into like digging into this legislatively. And it's one of the reasons why I want to look at the current legislation, because I think we've both heard that many commissions are frustrated with the public purpose percentage and the way that the law is written. So we want to revisit that and see if there's a way to embrace the spirit of what the grant is, perhaps with a not being so rigid.
Okay. Well, I look forward to working with you on that to the extent you need us. You set targets to get 75% of financial reports from ANCs on time in Q1 and Q2 of 2025. What percentage of reports were received on time in the last quarter?
Well, so that's, I'll have to get back to you on how many came in for that deadline. That's not a number I'd written down, and I apologize for that. What I was focused on in coming up with this, these targets is I was focused on our final review. What I have noticed is, having spent a lot of time digging through the QFRs in the last quarter, is that receiving the QFRs has not always translated into a date certain on when that QFR is reviewed. Oftentimes, the past practice in our office has been, well, I don't have all the documentation. I don't want to review it till I get all the documentation. And so that can mean that I think right now, as far as the release memos for Q1, which are triggered off of the QFRs being received, we're down to, I think, 3 release memos that have not been released for Q1 of FY24, which is significantly better than where we were last year. And so I want to get us to a point where it's not just receiving the QFRs, because oftentimes we will get the report and the report will be filed on time, but that's not necessarily been translated into what I would consider to be a timely review. Right. And so that's the other piece of the commitment that we have to make to the commissions, is we have to be on a tighter schedule of review so that there's some, I would say some importance. There has to be some importance that there's a reason why we're asking for documents. Those documents are to help the commission get their allotments, and not having a date certain means that there's no sense of urgency. They're like, well, we can get you those receipts next week, or we can get you those receipts next month. And what that means is last year in July and August, there was a mad scramble to try to get documents, that some going back to Q2. Thankfully, not most. This year, we are already far ahead of where we were last year. So
that's good. What do ANCs say are the reasons they're not getting them done on time?
Well, some of it has been the difficulty with getting the report while we were in that interim before the new software was released. I think the reasons that we hear are going to change now that we have new software. So I don't know if some of the reasons in the past are the same. We do know that with a very small number of commissions, we had an issue there for a while of getting the bank statements. Now, the commission may have been getting them, but that doesn't mean that we got them. So we've been working on that. And this isn't really related to the QFR as much, but one issue that we had, and it was something that was brought up earlier, is approval of the security fund, because that's been upsetting the apple cart somewhat too. I know that the example that was brought up earlier today sounded, it sounded traumatic, and it would be. Like a commission not having the fund approved for 3 months can be a burden. We had 2 commissions last year that didn't get approved at all. And that was a full year of spending that, you know, when push comes to shove, they still spent their money, and then it needed to be disallowed. And that's why we think that the security fund is something that really needs to be addressed. You know, we've talked to the Office of Risk Management. As long as financial controls are in place, they don't see a need for it. So that's a conversation we need to have.
So, and you mentioned the financial management system, and we spoke in the oversight hearing about transitioning to the new system. Are there any updates on that?
It's completely live.
Okay.
We do have some commissions, I checked yesterday, we do have some commissions that have completely completed and filed a report through the system.
Okay. And you, finally on this goal, you plan on having your quarterly release memos completed more timely. What are those? What are quarterly release memos?
So I refer to them as quarterly release memos. So when a QFR has been approved or reviewed and all the paperwork is there, what we do is we write a memo to OCFO to say, this commission has submitted all their paperwork based on our review. You can release their next quarter of their allotment so that that can now go into their bank account. Like I said, it's kind of a relationship with the QFR and the review of the QFR. And in some cases in the past, there's been a reluctance to issue that memo when there's a feeling that there's a chance that we might get some of those receipts in order to have a complete allowance, like a complete approval. I think it's more important, however, to again get these on a set schedule.
Mhm.
And if there are disallowances, because when there are disallowances, the memos themselves spell out why and what the commission needs to get those funds reinstated or to cure.
Right.
And so I think it's important to get them on a tighter schedule.
Okay. Let me move to the third goal, which is ANC training. The goal here that you shared with the committee is to enhance your on-demand training. This is something we funded a new staff member to support. I appreciate the update on the hiring process. The committee has been reviewing the number of trainings made available to commissioners, but as you pointed out, this isn't the best measure for their effectiveness. You mentioned some of the challenges with measuring it this way. I don't recall if you gave suggestions on how you think we should measure the effectiveness of this training program.
Well, I think it gets back to when I talked about if we're going to stand up an on-demand training program, I think a lot of it will have to do with the platform that it sits on and how we set up that training. Having given this some thought, I'm strongly getting behind that it needs to capture who participated. Ideally, there should be an assessment, even if it's not a lengthy one, to show that they've actually understood and listened to some of the content, that they can pass a test. It's not about whether or not they get to keep being a commissioner, clearly, but we want to know over time that, let's say, if we were able to get 30 treasurers take treasurer training and none of them got question number 3 right, whatever that question is, maybe that's an opportunity for us to dig into what that question means and what's behind it, because we need to be collecting the data on what's happening with the training. And we just have nothing like that today that will give us that kind of information. You know, and you know full well some of our challenge here, right? Is we can set up a training program. We have many times in the past, especially with newly elected commissioners in the fall. We have our boot camp. Commissioners attend most of them, but not all of them. We can try to emphasize that it's a great idea to attend, but we don't have the authority to make it mandatory. But I do think that any kind of training program where it relates to certain key functions, if there's an opportunity that requires us to cure, we could make a training certificate part of that curing process. And then the commission can choose if they want to cure it, if it has a financial impact or not. But I would think most of them would want to cure it, and therefore it's an opportunity for perhaps more structured training.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that You know, when I think about all of us when we were new hires and even when we have to go through periodic computer security training, like there's some training that we're required to take as government employees. Commissioners aren't really required, but I think if we make it easy enough to take and we put them in small enough discrete packages, I think many commissioners will want to take the training that's really relevant to the work they do.
Yeah, I think that's right. I wonder if there's an opportunity to collect and use as a measurement feedback. I'm sure there are better ways to do this, but you know, was this training helpful? Would you recommend it to other commissioners? Do you have any feedback for us on what you wish was included or what could have been different to make it more productive? I think with that basic level of engagement and feedback, what you'll have in a short period of time is really an effective training system as measured by commissioner feedback. But I like where things are going. I think to the point of your testimony, measurement is a little more difficult here, but I want us to work together to figure out what the right measurement is. And so you're suggesting moving away from YouTube to another platform. Why? What doesn't work about YouTube that might work for another platform?
Well, the problem with YouTube is it will give you views, right? But views doesn't tell us if it's a commissioner that viewed it. It doesn't tell us if it's a member of the general public that views it. It doesn't tell us anything other than, okay, we had a training that we recorded on FOIA. You know, I won't say that we get a large amount of commissioners who attend a FOIA training. You probably don't want to attend it unless you've been subject to a FOIA request and you want to know the ins and outs. So when we see the views on FOIA, we don't know if they're commissioners that are viewing it or people that even live in the District of Columbia. All we know is people are looking for a video recording of FOIA and they want to know more about it. And so I think that I believe the conversation we're having, and I think a shared vision, is if we're measuring things, we need to be measuring things that we know what they actually mean, and we actually be able to measure things that we can make actionable and be able to use that to improve a process or to expand a service. And right now, YouTube just doesn't seem to have the capacity to give us the kind of meaningful data that we would need to make decisions.
I take your point. I think there's also something to be said for ease of access. But I don't know the right answer here either. In your proposing 10 new on-demand trainings for commissioners, chairs, and treasurers before February 1st of next year, are you planning to administer all of those yourself or record or partner with other district agencies? Do you know how you plan to do those?
I think it would be a combination. I think first and foremost, we would have to take ownership if we really want to make sure that the content is relevant. But I think that we do have a lot of government partners. Some of them have expertise. You know, with, let's say, Robert's Rules of Order, for instance, we know BEGA has offered something that's available to, even now it's available to commissioners. Many of them haven't used it. And honestly, you know, the ins and outs of parliamentary procedure that perhaps commissioners need isn't quite as tuned to them, right? So I think there's an opportunity there that if another agency does have something that's on demand, that's highly relevant, we should be promoting that. We shouldn't be recreating the wheel. But we do know that there's a lot of things that commissioners do that, based on their hyper-local grassroots nature, that no one else really does, or it has nuances, you know, like negotiating a settlement agreement with ABCA. I'm not aware, and if they have one, we will definitely promote it, but I'm not aware of any on-demand training. I do know that ABCA hosts annual training for commissioners, but that's a live session that's virtual and recorded.
Right.
right? Like that's still no different than what we have traditionally done with ours. I think that might be an opportunity. Maybe we could collaborate with another agency to maybe develop something together. And I think it would have a lot of benefit because, you know, those aren't like any kind of negotiation at a community level. It can be a lot of work, especially if you haven't done it before.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, and especially to do it well. Let me move to the strategic plan. We asked you to focus on developing a strategic plan in part to ensure that we're making targeted investments in ANCs and centralizing services that all ANCs need. You mentioned in your testimony the draft strategic plan. What is the plan and timeline for finalizing it?
Well, I'm hopeful I can finalize it by the end of the fiscal year at the latest. The goal right now is I'm in the process of standing up an advisory board. I really want this to be something that's done in collaboration with commissioners as much as possible. And I think right now, though, the strategic plan is far enough along that it's finalizing and fine tuning. It's not necessarily, you know, just draft thoughts. I think there was a lot more to it than that. You know, this draft does have proposed timelines and dates when certain things are supposed to be completed. Those could be adjusted a little bit when we fine tune it, but the plan is in an advanced enough state that we're not treating it like some non-document, right? There's a lot of areas within the plan that are just the right thing for us to do, and I think we're committed to doing them. And so like websites is in the plan. We're not going to not work on websites because the plan's not final. Zoom is in the plan. We're not going to do Zoom because the plan isn't final. So, you know, where there's sections of the plan that have been well received and are clearly the right direction to go, we're working on those sections. Parts that might be a little bit more nuanced, we can have those conversations as we work towards finalizing the plan. But I wouldn't say not having a finalized plan is going to prevent us from working within that framework.
But what's the timeline for finalizing it?
Well, I'm shooting for October 1st only because working with commissioners can take time. And, you know, we've probably received, I'll say about as many as 20, maybe 21. But I'd have to look and I could get you this number pretty easily. But we did receive feedback on the plan. So we have been taking that in. I haven't really reviewed it with a critical eye yet because that is something I wanted to do when we have a board. But we've been taking in the feedback. And even though I think I had a very aggressive date, I want to say March 1st is a deadline. I made it very clear with any commissioner that reached out to us when they were saying, oh, well, you know, we don't, you know, we won't meet again until after March. I'm like, just get it to us. Like, and even after that deadline, I sent out a final call to all commissioners, letting them know that if they still had anything to say, we could still receive it.
Okay.
So I want to make it very clear that any comments, any participation, any suggestions, we are taking them in. We take them seriously. We'll review them and we'll see where they align. But this is also a good time to say too that there are things that are not in the plan for very intentional reasons. For instance, one comment we received talked about the absence of the ANC resolution portal in the plan. I think the portal could be a wonderful tool. It's a tool that's been around for a while. It has some hiccups in it, but it is also something that statute has assigned to the mayor and the mayor's office. And since I don't supervise the mayor and would never assume to do so, it's not in the plan because it's not something that we have control over.
Okay.
That is not to say that we don't think it's valuable, and it certainly isn't to say that we won't be as engaged as we can with OCTA or whomever to improve the process, but that's not going to be an official, like,
Yeah.
task.
I mean, I think the struggle with the strategic plan is there's if it includes too much, it becomes unrealistic and unwieldy. If it includes too little, it's
Right.
ineffective. Getting that balance right, I think, necessarily means that there are going to be things that some folks think should be in there that aren't. Hopefully, the majority of commissioners, I mean, if it's done well, will agree that the majority of things in there are important and priority issues for them. So I have no doubt that that there will be issues that many commissioners will feel like there are some things that aren't in there that should be. Does the office need anything else to finish the strategic plan and start implementing it over the next year?
My short answer is no. I think that it's going to require time and some hours to finalize it, and some conversations that still need to happen. But as far as financial resources, no. The only possible thing I can think of, but it's probably would be well within our budget, is if people feel strongly that there needs to be a small print run versus completely digital, right? And I could see where there might be some individuals, some commissioners, some members of the community that might really want something published. So that's the only thing I can think of that would require funds. But as far as finalizing the content and coming up with a really good document, I don't think, well, let me rephrase that. I think we're in good order.
Okay. Let me talk budget very quickly, and we're wrapping up pretty soon. There are two big proposed changes to your budget reflected in the mayor's budget proposal. As I mentioned, I was disappointed at the mayor's proposing to sweep $353,520 from the OANC Technical Support and Assistance Fund this year. Did I understand your testimony to suggest that you might be able to figure this out within your current budget?
Possibly, but the things that would be impacted or could be impacted, and it depends on how we want to proceed. Like a short-term solution could be either funds in the technical assistance fund may be there, but that fund is only like refreshed from disallowances, which is something we always try not to do. So that's not sustainable. The other thing is if there are areas where the committee and the council feel it would be appropriate, that those really should be expenditures that come from the commissions and not the OANC, like the 65,000 for annual websites or the 23 for Zoom. Those could come out of the 916,000 that's the allotments. I don't know if that would be popular or even it's the right thing to do. But prior to launching the websites and prior to moving Zoom accounts over to the enterprise license, those have been costs that have been traditionally borne by the commissions themselves.
Yeah, that would be not ideal. I think there would be some understandably angry commissioners.
But I think to your point, while there are options, I don't know if they're good options. And the loss of those funds is something that we have to contend with.
Yeah. This is currently funded from funds that ANC's forfeit.
Correct.
When they lose their allocations. How much was added last year from ANCs whose funds were withheld?
I would have to get back to you on that. I do have a table. I want to say, well, I know it was less than 100,000. and I hope it was significantly less than that, but I will have to get back to you with a hard number,
Okay.
and I can do that.
The second major budget change in your budget is the removal of $143,000 in one-time funding that the committee added to your budget last year to try to fill gaps caused by the office entering into several multi-year contracts where there wasn't enough recurring money to pay for them. If we're not able to replace that money, what will be the impact to OANC?
Yeah, that's another great question. We may, honestly, if we're not able to recover that money, I'm sure we could find a way to cover those things, but it's going to be at the expense of developing a database of community benefit agreements or things like that. So what it's going to mean is we'll find a way to cover it because we have an obligation to do so, but it means that we are going to perhaps not implement parts of the strategic plan that we were hoping to do. We are not going to be developing a database for CBAs. You know, there's other priorities that we would like to do if we're fully funded, but we will keep our commitments to the things that are currently ongoing. We just won't stand up new things.
Okay. And finally, Commissioner Borrego, his testimony mentioned frustration with the difficulty of commissioners procuring goods and services. It is hard being a treasurer. What are your thoughts on centralizing procurements in the OANC for commissions?
I hear the recommendation. I'm not entirely sure it's feasible. One, it would require a significant investment in staff. I don't know if it would be one staff member or two. I have to figure that out. But I think that's probably the smaller issue. For instance, we've talked about or had discussions internally about, well, what would it look like if the funds were internally managed by OFRM or something like that, because that's how other funds are managed. And the question that keeps coming up is, but these are internal, well, these are independent agencies that each have their own budgets and each have their own accounts for a variety of reasons. And one question I would have is, if this were centrally managed, I think this current budget is a good example. The mayor's proposed budget didn't seem to have any problem sweeping money out of our budget, but they left the ANC budgets alone. So if the ANC budgets were now centrally managed, does that expand risk of what could be swept?
That's a good philosophical question, but I do want to explore the idea of centralizing procurements. Just recognizing that it is difficult to be commissioners. I mean, what commissioners may or may not realize, procurements from your office is no walk in the park either, or from our offices. But what isn't lost on me is that it's difficult. It takes a lot of work for commissioners to do their job. It's unpaid, and they are, because of some of our processes, having to pay for things and get reimbursements. Sometimes those reimbursements take years. So this is something I'd like us to understand, whether this is necessary. There are a lot of needs, and the various needs compete against each other because we can't do everything at once. So this is something I'd like to understand, whether this is something we should be looking at, and if so, where it falls in the order of priority of needs for commissioners.
Well, I would offer that more immediate things that we can do are look at the processes that are currently in place. As mentioned, and the commissioner mentioned, the security fund is a great frustration. If that goes away, there's a lot of hours that go back to the commission, and there's a lot more timeliness that the commission has in spending their funds. I think if we improve the process for debit card purchases, and if we expand the ANC's ability to make purchases through ACH, they're not what he's asking for, and I acknowledge that, and I understand the amount of time that every treasurer puts into their role. But those things are things that we can do while we're exploring alternatives that may make things easier for the treasurers in the short term.
Okay. Well, we will continue to explore that. I appreciate you understanding that the difficulty. You are a commissioner. You get it. So I appreciate it. Director Base, those are all the questions I have for you, and look forward to working with you and your team across the budget.
Thank you. I appreciate being here as well.
Thanks so much. We are going to take a 5-minute recess between government witnesses. So we're going to recess, and we will resume in about 5 minutes with Director Lamont Carey of the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens Affairs. We are in a brief recess. We are resumed. I want to welcome Director Carey from ORCA and his team. As you all know, it's the practice of this committee to put our government witnesses under oath. So I ask that you raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Housing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. Director, you can begin your testimony. I'm sorry, Director, would you hit the button on your microphone? Thanks.
You hear me now? All right. Good afternoon, Chairman White, esteemed members of the committee, and dedicated staff. My name is Lamont Carey, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office on Returning Citizens Affairs. I am honored to present testimony today regarding Mayor Bowser's fiscal year 25, a fair shot, strategic investment, and shared sacrifice. I am proud to represent an office committed to supporting individuals reentering society following incarceration. Thanks to the visionary leadership of Mayor Muriel Bowser and the diligent efforts of the council, the District of Columbia stands as a beacon of progressiveness, offering unparalleled opportunities for individuals to rebuild their lives, strengthen their families, and positively impact our community. ORCA's proposed budget for fiscal year 2025 is strategically designed to advance the mayor's vision and ORCA's core mission of eliminating barriers for returning citizens and fostering a greater pathway to the middle class. In FY25, ORCA will continue its investment in the ORCA Georgetown Paralegal Program, which has proven to be instrumental in empowering returning citizens. The fifth cohort started on April 1st, and it comprises 15 enthusiastic individuals eager to embark on their transformative journey. Notably, ORCA has successfully aided in coordinating a much-needed digital literacy training component in this program, enhancing its overall effectiveness. We are delighted to announce an increase in the stipend for all participants to $17.50 an hour, coinciding with the implementation of the minimum wage increase in the district. Upon completion of ORCA's Georgetown Paralegal Program, graduates will not only attain a paralegal credential, but will also have the opportunity to interview for fellowship positions within reputable law firms, ultimately paving the way for employment as paralegals within reputable organizations. In FY25, we eagerly anticipate welcoming the sixth cohort of returning citizens into this program, each posed to embark on their journey towards becoming skilled paralegals and valuable contributors to our communities. With great enthusiasm, ORCA is entering its third year of implementing the Access to Job Grants Initiative. This program serves as an employment subsidy initiative aimed at incentivizing employers to hire returning citizens. Over the past 2 years, the program has facilitated the employment of a maximum of 10 returning citizens. This upcoming fiscal year, investments will allow us to continue to provide this opportunity to participants and potential employers. This on-the-job training program will help develop a robust middle class where returning citizens will get their fair shot through this government-private partnership. During the fiscal year, on track to facilitate a placement of 60 returning citizens in transportation sector jobs by providing them with training for their Class B CDL license. This initiative enables graduates to pursue employment opportunities in various capacities, including operating large passenger buses, box trucks, dump trucks with smaller trailers, and straight trucks, among others. Build upon this success in FY25, we are committed to furthering this investment by securing 30 slots for individuals seeking to obtain their Class B CDL license, and additional 30 slots for those interested in acquiring a Class B CDL license. Completion of the Class A CDL training program will qualify individuals to operate tractor trailers, truck and trailer combinations, tank vehicles, livestock carriers, flatbed trucks, and more. By supporting returning citizens and completing these classes, ORCA aims to enhance program participants' employability across a broad spectrum of driving positions within and around the district, thereby fostering greater economic opportunity and stability for these individuals. In FY25, ORCA is committed to furthering the professional development of both our staff and clients through various training initiatives. In today's landscape, there's a growing demand for individuals with lived experiences to contribute to program development and implementation. Our objective is to empower returning citizens by demonstrating the value of their experiences in enhancing community well-being, reducing recidivism rates, and fostering economic stability. Building upon the success of FY24, we will introduce a pilot program aimed at providing professional development to enhance the skills of our peer navigators. This program will focus on equipping them with the tools to effectively transfer and transform their lived experiences as reentry experts into a marketable skill and service. In FY25, we plan to expand the training beyond peer navigators to include returning citizens we serve. Through this initiative, we strive to equip returning citizens with the necessary skills to leverage their experiences for personal and societal growth. Additionally, ORCA is in the process of implementing leadership development training for our team. This year, we plan to conduct 5 sessions aimed at fostering a culture of advancement and growth within our agency. These sessions will encourage team members to envision their career progression and identify activities and skill building opportunities required to increase their likelihood of promotion and advancement into leadership roles, both within and beyond ORCA. In FY25, ORCA remains committed to addressing transportation barriers faced by returning citizens, recognizing its significant in hindering successful reintegration. Our strategy involves investing in targeted initiatives tailored to alleviate transportation challenges for diverse groups, encompassing returning citizens who have recently attained employment for up to 2 months. Those actively engaged in training programs, individuals released within the past 60 days, and those commuting from Baltimore Halfway House to navigate the district for their reintegration efforts. Through these efforts, we aim to facilitate smoother transitions and broaden opportunities for returning citizens to actively participate and contribute to their reintegration journey. In FY25, ORCA is dedicated to reinstating our highly anticipated trips to the FBOP federal institutions. Currently, we have received approval to visit 3 federal institutions in collaboration with our community partners. Our objective is to secure a minimum of 3 additional trips before the conclusion of FY24, with an ambitious plan to expand our efforts in FY25 by organizing at least 8 trips to the FBOP facilities. These trips will encompass 2 key initiatives: family reunification trips and resource fair trips. Family reunification trips entail transporting individuals serving time and their families to one facilities for visits. On the other hand, the resource fair trips involve escorting government and community partners directly into institutions to engage with DC residents and inform them about the services available to them. By facilitating these trips, we aim to strengthen bonds, provide essential resources, and foster community connections for incarcerated individuals preparing for reentry into our society. In FY25, ORCA will prioritize the removal of barriers for returning citizens by fostering strategic partnerships to address the diverse needs of individuals, different stages of their reintegration journey, whether they have recently returned, have been reintegrated for several years, or have faced ongoing challenges despite decades of freedom. ORCA is committed to providing comprehensive support while there is ongoing work to be done. This dedication of Mayor Muriel Bowser's administration remains unwavering, and its commitment to supporting the successful reintegration of returning citizens. Again, I thank you all for this opportunity to testify. I welcome any questions from the committee, and I invite anyone who might be interested in contacting our office to please do so by calling us at 202-715-7670, emailing us at orca@dc.gov, or by visiting us online or in the community at communityaffairs.dc.gov.
Thank you very much, Director. As we start, can you let us know who's at the witness table with you?
I'll allow them to introduce. I'll start from my left.
Would you hit your microphone?
I got you.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Jordan Say, Director of Operations with the Mayor's Office on Returning Citizens Affairs.
thank you.
I'm Archana Khare, Budget Officer for Office of OCFO.
Okay,
Sylvie Maunga, the Workforce Program Manager at MOCA.
thank you very much. So we'll start with goals, Director. One of my longstanding concerns, as you heard earlier, but more specific to this agency, is that DC's returning citizens are often released and go straight into shelters or onto the street because we don't adequately plan for their return home while they're still incarcerated. That both makes it impossible for them to regain stability and ends up costing the city more money, which is why one of my first pieces of legislation mandated more pre-release planning. I understand that you are supposed to receive a quarterly list of people expected to be released from FBOP. Is that right?
As I mentioned in the oversight hearing, we are trying to work that out. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. And so we are in conversations to see how we can do an MOU to solidify that, and so that it is ongoing without disruption.
And what's the status of the MOU?
So we're still in the development stage of it. One of our government sister agencies actually has an MOU, and so we're trying to take things from that MOU to help solidify ours. And then we'll be submitting to the FBO, sending up the chain for approvals and then submitting to the FBOP.
When do you plan to submit it to send it up the chain internally?
Our hopes is within the next 3 months at a minimum, maybe maximum.
Okay, and why will it take 3 more months to complete the MOU within your agency?
So because the goal is to try to cover every basis, to make sure the things that we want to receive from them, that we are including all of those things. So it may take a shorter time frame, but I don't want to say it's going to be sooner and it doesn't. And then I'm questioning on why it wasn't done in a timely fashion.
Do you have a sense of how long you expect things to take after you submit it for approval internally?
No, that will depend on the FBOP and their processes of reviewing, I guess, and improving MOUs.
Well, in 3 months, you hope to have an MOU to send to BOP, or have an MOU to send essentially for the mayor's sign off?
So the hopes is that within the 3 months span that it would have been submitted to them.
To BOP?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Do you know how many returning citizens were released this fiscal year so far? DC residents?
So we didn't, I can get you that information, because we just did it for the quarter.
Okay, well, will somebody be able to grab it during the hearing? Oh, you
no,
say
no,
you
we-
do have it for the quarter?
Yeah, yeah, because we have to pull that information from from FBOP as well as some of our local partners to get you accurate numbers on how many people that have been released.
Okay, and did you say you do have that information for for at least one quarter this fiscal year?
Yeah,
Okay, what's that?
so overall supervised population is 6,791. And that breaks down overall supervised population in DC was 5,373. Overall active status is 3,444.
But do you have an idea of, is that, that's the number of people in BOP, or is that the number of people released?
So in DOC and FY, it's 23. Oh, 24, right. FY 23, DOC was 4,713 men and 633 women. And FY 24 quarter one, 1,310 men and 169 women. And FBOP, 458 men and 3 women.
Released,
Yes.
okay.
Oh, and federal code offenders, it was 148 men and 8 women.
And you mentioned in our oversight hearing that you send a letter to people expected to be released. You said you were gonna send the committee a copy of that letter, which we haven't gotten. Can you send that? You'll be able to send that?
Yes.
Thank you. So as we wait for the MOU to be developed and agreed to by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, how can we proactively produce individualized reentry plans for residents so that we don't have to wait until they get home to work on things like housing and IDs?
So I know that, I know every hearing that we have had together, I have always stated that the task of giving them this plan that you are advocating for is a challenge, right? Especially that we don't have that information to get it directly to them. And then I think with helping the individual devise a plan on reentry, I think we have to consider 2 main factors: things that they believe that they need in order for them to successfully reenter, and then experts such as my staff that have assisted thousands of individuals on their successful reintegration back into our community to add additional things that individuals may be missing. And so I think the goal is to see how we can eventually look at being able to accomplish what you're asking, because the other thing I want you to take into consideration is that DC offenders are housed.
If you two could turn off your mics.
DC offenders are housed all over the country. And so being able to like progressively sit down and help them fill out their plan is going to be a bit of a challenge. But things that we are doing, one, we always in constant communication with BOP, trying to further access to individuals, giving the BOP ideas, because we participate in what they have is called listening sessions. So we offer suggestions on how even to prepare the LGBTQ community, veterans, the services that exist. We've also sent like our literature to BOP to be able to disperse among DC code offenders. And the thing, as I mentioned, even in my testimony, is the goal of scheduling more BOP trips to be able to interact directly with DC residents that are serving time. And so those are some of the things that we're doing in addition to the outreach that we do in the community to try to connect with family and friends to make them aware, one, that MORCA exists, and to be able to provide some of the things that we believe that they should be trying to secure before release. Things like at their birth certificate. BOP let us know that they will provide the form for them, but they have to pay for it. They will provide the form for them to get their social security card. And the BOP has also stated that they are going to create a government ID that each individual will have in their possession for when they go home. And so those are some of the things that we are actively doing to support our individuals that are currently incarcerated.
So BOP is working to provide residents with a government ID
Yes.
before they go home.
A
Okay.
federal, some,
Yeah. So when you send letters to our DC code offenders, how do you, what's the response? Are you getting engagement from them to say, yes, we want your help getting some things lined up before we get home?
well, usually the engagement is, can you send us the application for this? Can you send us something that maybe on CDL, some information? So it's more about information for things that they're interested as individuals.
Okay. And so BOP.
Oh, if I may, also the other thing that we have been able to support some individuals that are getting released for compassionate release and IRA for helping them come up with their plan about when they come to MORCA, what are some of the things that MORCA can assist them with and connect them to.
Okay. So BOP gives you the information to send mail to the DC code offenders?
So when we were receiving the list from them, they will give us the ID number and the name and to answer your question, most of the time we have to look up, well, all the time we had to look up the institution that the individual is in and copy the address from there and send it.
Okay. So you have a list of DC code offenders and then you go to like BOP website to find out where they are housed?
Yes, when we had a list, that's part of what we would do. Go to there, find them on the inmate locator, hit the link to find out what institution and the mailing address.
And when was the last time BOP gave you a list?
I believe that was early, like October? Yeah, probably early October.
Do you track where residents end up after they come home?
So when an individual, as you know, the mayor's office on Return to Citizens Affairs is for the most part a walk-in agency. And so every individual that comes home don't necessarily come to MORCA. But we work to increase that by having strong relationships with CSOSA, who supervises DC code offenders, as well as U.S. probation, who supervises federal code offenders. And so we interact with them, probably CSOSA more than U.S. probation, in various ways to reach DC residents that have been released. And so every individual that gets released is not mandated to come to MORCA, but those that do, we work to support them, but we aim to get the word out so that all individuals know to come to MORCA for reintegration supports.
What's the reason that you've gotten from BOP about not sending a new list within the past 6 months?
So if it fluctuates, sometimes it is the individual, it seems, that will provide in the list may have moved on. The other thing has been that we aren't law enforcement, and that has been like the other barrier.
So other than tracking recidivism, how does the district track the success of reentry for all people being released from jail or prison?
So I only can speak for, so when an individual comes to ORCA, we connect them to organizations and that provide the services that they're seeking. And we conduct follow-up with the individual and with the organization to determine if individuals have completed the services that we referred them for. Oftentimes, the feedback that we get when trying to contact the individuals is that their phone number changes. The email that they created is no longer being utilized by them. And so we try to work with CSOSA by providing them a list of names of individuals who we are no longer to get in contact with to see if they have new communication. And so unless we get the feedback from the organizations and from the individual, that is the way that we track how many individuals that we service have completed the referrals that we have given.
Okay. Well, this is, I guess, a good segue into specific goals. Your first goal is increasing strategic partnerships. How do you define a strategic partnership?
So we define strategic partnerships as looking at organizations that spaces that welcome returning citizens and those that our clients have been interested in connecting with. So for example, if an individual comes home and they're interested in entrepreneurship, we see what organizations out there that provide entrepreneurship, and it becomes part of our aim to connect and build a strong relationship with that organization so that our clients can have access.
Okay, so a strategic partnership is a partnership with any organization whose work might help or be of interest to your clients.
Right. And avenues that we believe that could interest our clients. And so that's how we decide what organizations that we're going after and yeah.
Okay. And you said you want to collaborate with 3 organizations per quarter in each sector. What counts as a collaboration for this purpose?
So a collaboration can mirror many things. A collaboration could be a training program that our clients can participate in that is skill building. It could be education, GED, it could be skill building, apprenticeship programs, CDL programs. It could be a variety of things that are based off of providing the service that our clients need in order for them to move forward on the pathway to the middle class or even improve their quality of life. So it may even consist of a housing program that provide beds, and we build a stronger relationship so that when the bed comes open, they will contact us and say, we have space for one individual. How many?
Okay. And 3 organizations per quarter in each sector. What sectors are you referring to?
So we have peer navigators, we have workforce, we have case managers, and we have outreach.
All right. So it'll be a total of about 12 organizations per quarter?
Correct. That's the goal.
Okay. And you said each department will fortify existing partnerships. What does it mean to fortify your partnerships?
So we have, example would be that we have organizations that we have been referring people to. So fortifying it would be strengthening the relationship in terms of making sure our point of contact that we always have one. It also means that we become aware of other programs that they may be planning to offer or are currently offering that we are not taking advantage of. And so that's what I mean by fortifying our relationships.
And is the goal, so this is a goal for every quarter, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And how do you know, so if you meet this goal of what's essentially 12 collaborations with strategic partners each quarter, how do you know or measure if those collaborations are successful?
So in several ways, right? One, when we have either it's a partner that we are trying to strengthen the relationship, or if it's a new partner, we tend to invite them to come and speak to the staff so that the whole team knows what services and opportunities that the organization provides. Also being able to have that ability to pick up the phone or email an individual and being able to refer clients that have completed enter programs in the hopes is that every client that we refer completes the program. And so that is how we measure, even though chances are that every client won't always complete every program, because this has been what we have experienced, but that is the goal, how we measure the success. What have we done with this partner? How do we utilize this partner to strengthen our residents, right? For another example I can give you is we're working on doing a financial literacy component that focuses on stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and cryptos, right? This partner is not one that we're going to be referring people to, but we're going to be collaborating to do small events where our clients can come and learn this information. And so some going to be referral and some going to be collaborations where we put on an event or training together.
So from the public or council oversight perspective, how will we know if this effort is succeeding for returning citizens? So, we could measure sort of the number of people who end up with jobs from a particular program, maybe even the number of people who participate in another program. How will we be able to determine for these 12, which may or may not, some of them may be the same each month, some of them may be different. Is that right?
Well, some people have a variety of interests, so it's possible that some can be recurrent participants in programs, but ways that we have done for you is how many referrals that was given, how many referrals that was completed. And so that still remains active, and how many of our clients participated in this specific program.
Mhm.
And so, but I think when it comes to like our peer navigators, as they conduct their follow-up engagements with individuals, part of their question to individuals, okay, we referred you to this program, or you participated in this program, did you complete it? Were you hired? What skills came out of that? And I'm guessing we're gonna be probably moving to with the financial literacy training, like how did you utilize that information since you took a part in that training? So the outcomes or the outcomes of what is considered success may vary depending on the individuals. And again, of course, we may have individuals that participate in the financial literacy program, but they also seeing case managers for their ID, right? And so they're gonna be referred to the DMV. So that will be participating in 2 programs. And we may have individuals that may be participating in 5 different things that we're doing based off their need: birth certificate, social security card, ticket program, education program, employment program, job skill building program. So it depends on what the need of each individual that will determine what programs or resources that we connect them to.
Right. So for programs whose purpose is to improve like transportation, food, clothing resources, why not focus on those outcomes as the goal instead of the partnerships as the goal?
So one of those sectors, so focus on the partner as the goal would be minimizing the impact that we're having with our population. So I think I mentioned in our oversight hearing that the mayor has us input in data, what is called our performance accountability report, right? Where we map out what's our goals for the year, how we plan to implement those goals, how many partners are we planning to connect with. And every quarter we have to input these KPIs into this plan. And if need be, I can send it to you or have it sent to you so you can see. And we've even expanded it because it wasn't capturing everything that ORCA does for clients. And so to answer your question, for us, we do count the organization, but if we just count that one organization, but we send 75 people there for clothing, then we're not showing the real impact that we're having on our population. We're just showing the relationship that we have with the organization.
Exactly. So if you have a partner organization and you send 75 and only 25 get clothing, and you have another partner organization and you send 50 and 50 get clothing, we would say that the impact for the second is better because we'd be measuring the outcome,
Right.
And not just the partnership. And that's where I'd like us to get to, because what I worry about is as budgets become tighter, the council every year is going to scrutinize more and more the impact. And when I'm saying to my colleagues on the council, we got to protect funding for the Office of Returning Citizens Affairs, and they say, well, how many people got jobs? You know, how many people got housing? How many fewer people ended up in shelters? And we can't answer those specific questions. I worry about what's going to happen to the agency.
So I think with 2 things: 1, you can answer those questions. 2, we already doing it. One clothing partner that we have is Martha's Table. We can never have enough cards from them because our clients come in every day in need of clothing. But what made us even expand looking for additional clothing opportunities for our clients to connect them to, because a lot of the clothing that we currently refer them to is business job interview attire. And so what we have done is we've even encouraging churches, because people come to us and want to donate clothes, right? And so we're even looking at partners that we can encourage to open up a clothing closet. And so we are doing the things that you're saying that you're hoping to get us to. We're doing it, but we're just trying to expand it, because what we don't want is we send these 50 people to this partner and all the clothing runs out, and then the next 25 that come that month, there is no clothing for them. Or we send these 50 individuals to this partner and it's not the kind of clothing that they are looking for to walk around with every day. And so we are doing the work. We're just trying to expand it where there's more than enough access for our clients.
Okay. Let me then move to the second goal, which is housing, enhancing housing opportunities for returning citizens, something I absolutely support, and the reason that I've been funding housing vouchers specifically for returning citizens. You said that you aim to facilitate housing for 30 returning citizens in semi to permanent housing arrangements this fiscal year. How do you define semi to permanent housing arrangements?
So we define that as like transitional housing, will be semi-permanent, housing. And permanent housing will be whether they receive, connected to a partner that also can connect them to a voucher or long-term, living opportunities. And so that's how we define semi and permanent. Our hopes, I mean, the mega wish, and is the part of the mayor's mission is to house all of our people, right? But our people are a makeup of different needs and barriers. One of the things that we had to shift from in previous hearings, if you look back, we would say to get our people on the pathway to the middle class. But what we have come to learn is that some of our people, because of disabilities, may never have the kind of career that we would like, that will put them on the pathway to the middle class. And so we had to look at other alternatives. How do we improve their quality of life? But our goal would be, one, we have 20 vouchers, right? But we are always looking for, one, we don't look for return to citizen housing. We've moved that. We look at housing based off the individual needs. So we have somebody that's a senior, we look at what opportunities to house individuals that are seniors. If we have individuals that have substance abuse issues, we look at, are there any organizations that we can connect with that has a housing component as well as a workforce component. And so that's what I mean by like broadening how we look at and our approach of having our people placed in housing.
Halfway house would not count as semi permanent housing, is that right?
Halfway houses is still prison.
Okay, just making sure. Are you on track? How many returning citizens have you successfully facilitated the housing of this fiscal year?
Bear with me 1 second.
Mhm.
Still pulling it.
Mhm.
So we have successfully placed 152 individuals in permanent housing, 54 in transitional housing, 36 in shelters, and 2 as home buyers.
That's great. So, um, so that's about 244 roughly, halfway through the fiscal year, but your goal is 30. So why is the goal so low? You all seem to be doing really well with housing. So why set the goal at 30?
So one of the things that I want to make you aware about housing, especially semi-permanent housing. So we help an individual get placed into a transitional house. The transitional house may be for 90 days, right? But they may be able to extend it longer. And so my hope is when we get to 30, we not stopping, right?
Mhm.
That is not what that means. That means that our goal is to place 30 more individuals into housing because we don't control the housing, one, right? So there has to be an opportunity that exists for us to place individuals inside of these housing opportunities. And so we wanted to be, we didn't, even though we have done extremely well, we didn't want to be over ambitious, but when we surpass the 30 amount, then that'll be something that we could really hang our hat on. But we don't control who gets into transitional housing, who gets into permanent housing outside of the vouchers that we provide.
So how did you get so many people into housing this fiscal year so far?
My team aggressively seeking out housing opportunities that haven't always been the traditional. So again, we have gotten individuals in like the Christ House that may have gotten released on compassionate leave that has a chronic illness. We have gotten individuals through our collaborations with mental health providers that have been skillful in getting us people into housing. And so my team works aggressively to meet the needs of the returning citizens because we are the legislatively mandated agency to support the reintegration of returning citizens. And so we just look outside of returning citizens opportunities.
Okay. All right. I'm happy to hear the success. I'm now concerned with the goal because this goal is 1/8 of what you've already done in half of a fiscal year. So how do I make sense of that?
So I think the way that you make sense of it is that we don't control housing, right? We only can connect with partners that when the bed comes open, that we can get a partner in. We can't force them or mandate them to let our people in because we're not paying for the housing. And so I think it will be setting ourselves up for failure if we had this wide goal of something that we can't meet. And I get that you believe that that is a short measure of how we're going to be successful in getting 30 people. But again, I stress to you that we don't control housing, and all we can do is campaign for our people to be having access to housing and permanent housing because they have to pay rent. We have to ensure that our clients are employed and being able to secure permanent housing. If you look at the numbers that we stressed, we got 2 homeowners out of that number. And so it is a challenge, and I would hate to put my team under a pressure of meeting a goal that may become more challenging as funding in other areas shrink, as because of housing organizations funding. A lot of them are coming to us asking where can they find funding, and so that places potentially those beds that we have been referring to at risk.
Okay. So the housing is inconsistent. Of this goal of 30, you have approximately 20 housing vouchers. Are those included in that goal of 30?
So we currently have 14 housing vouchers that we have. So we have 9. We have 3 pending debriefing, 20 searching. We have 2 pending eligibility, 1 pending lease up, and 1 issue. And so in total, there were 27
Okay,
vouchers.
there were 27. Okay. So if we land, so, um, so 27 vouchers, usually the baseline is about 20. We always try to get more than that. So if they're between 20 and 27, if you just give folks the vouchers and they get housing, you're most of the way to that goal. How many people in the agency work on housing and housing placement?
Three case managers who work on housing.
Okay, so outside of the housing vouchers, that'd be.
Hold on, correction.
Mhm.
3 case managers in terms of vouchers,
Mhm.
are working on vouchers housing.
Okay. Okay. And what about all these other housing opportunities that, who works on those, looking
So
for other
that
opportunities?
is a combination of case managers, peer navigators, myself, Director of Operations, Jordan Sade, and Workforce Even. So all of us are usually trying to figure out how do we house our people.
Okay. Then outside of the vouchers, that's like less than one housing opportunity per person, working on that. So I still think the 30 is a low number.
So I appreciate you acknowledging our success of housing as many people that we have housed already this year. We are not going to slow down on that, but we don't control housing. We don't control who can get in and who cannot get in outside of our vouchers. And so again, I know the numbers seem low based on the success that we have had. So champion the success that we've had, right? Champion that, but also know that goal is not a stop for us.
I hear you loud and clear on that. And that point is relevant. The point I'm making is if we fund 20 housing vouchers, then if you find 10 other housing opportunities, you've met that goal
So-
for the fiscal year.
So I just was updated that the housing vouchers are not included in that. And also, even with the housing vouchers, we already have 9, I believe that was, what's the number? 4. Okay. For the ones that went through. Okay, yeah. So I just was updated, that housing vouchers are not included in the 30.
Okay. You said you want to conduct a comprehensive landscape analysis of current housing vacancies within your network. What network are you referencing?
The network where we've already placed individuals into housing and those that my staff is potentially engaging now to gain access to housing.
And you also said you will explore 2 new housing resources. What does that mean?
So as I mentioned earlier, we are always looking for opportunities that will position our clients to win. And so that consists of, if we want to place more people in more housing, we often have to find more people that are offering housing. Maybe an organization recently got a grant where they could do some housing. And so that is what I mean by that.
Okay. Let me move to employment. I agree with the focus on your third goal of employment. We know that employment is much harder to attain for returning citizens often because of stigmas and biases. Your goal is to place 40 people into training programs and 40 people into employment. So this is 80 individuals total?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it could be crossed over because some of those so one of the things that we do now is, as we look at this landscape of individuals that's offering training, we look at who has like a workforce component. So some of those individuals that we may put into a training program may also in the end be helping them secure employment.
Okay.
Correct.
How many people have you placed into training programs this fiscal year so far? Would you turn your microphone on? Thank you.
This fiscal year, we have placed 143 people.
143, okay. And do you have the number for last fiscal year?
For last fiscal year, you have it, Ms. John.
522.
Okay, that's great. And how about place into jobs this fiscal year?
111, I'm sorry.
Okay, and last fiscal year into jobs?
It was 500 to 222
Oh, he says employment.
for the employment last year.
Correct, employment.
Yeah. It's 500 some. You have that. Let's not give it to you.
Last year was 522.
Right. So the same number placed into training programs is placed into jobs.
We have both numbers for employment.
I don't have that one. I give it to you.
Okay, well, let me just clarify what we have. So the 522 for last year, is that the number of people into employment or the number of people into, okay. All right. That is great. So then let me come back to your goal. So last fiscal year, you had 522 people into employment, probably more than that into training programs. Your goal is 40 people into employment and 40 people into training programs. So this is another one where the goal seems low compared to where you are.
So if you recall, one of our goals is that we become that there is a lot of changes that have taken place. And so one of the things that we're making sure that we're doing to ensure that everyone has a fair shot, we're being strategic in like where or how we find these opportunities, because things have changed. The training programs as well as housing programs have lost funding in some areas. And so partners that we were potentially that were one of our go-tos for training 25 people at a time, now they're saying that they're more limited because of funding opportunities for them, so they won't be training the same amount of individuals. So our projections, we had become conservative in those, right? Because if the funding isn't there, we can't place people. The only people that we could place people in is those that we could have some input and or pay in to have the individuals hired, like with access to jobs, right? We know that we can have 10 returning citizens employed because we are paying the employer or incentivizing the employer to hire from our population. And so other industries, we don't have that capability. And so we can only hope that like training programs have openings where they can take on our people, and it may be less than previous years.
Where do the training programs get their funding?
I would have to circle back and talk to some of them because I'm not always sure where they get their funding. I just know they tell us how many slots in the training that they're offering.
My concern there would be if the slots are based on what DC is funding for those training programs, then we will be hurting ourselves in terms of our ability to get people into programs.
But I can't say that is where funding is coming from. That is something that I don't know.
So, okay. So I hear you on the concern that this is still 40, your goal is 40 people into training programs and employment, and what you're doing now is many, many, many times higher than that. And I understand unpredictability, but I'm looking at your numbers as a baseline, and the goals are looking very modest. But I mean, I understand your position about unpredictability.
So take this into an account, right? So we have individuals that are getting released that are looking for employment. And we have individuals that the number is could potentially be shrinking, that we're able to get into training programs. And so those that come out, in a lot of cases, more skilled up, will have a greater opportunity to get into qualify for employment tracks, especially if the organization has that as a component. Again, we only can control what we can control, but that doesn't mean that's where it ends, because we're constantly looking at avenues to employ our residents. So some of the things, or the newest thing that we're going to utilize is the bonding program, right? To help incentivize employers that have some concern about taking risk with our clients, that there is some levels of maybe providing some levels of comfort, but also the ability to connect our returning citizens to entrepreneurship programming that could also create new opportunities for employment for our population. And so even though it may be the opportunities are not there as they once were, but we're always aiming to put our people on a pathway to the middle class, whether that is a job, whether that is entrepreneurship. And so one of the things I think that may be sort of unique that we're starting to do is that when the individual get hired, right, and we confirm that the individual is hired there, we ask them or contact the employer to see if they have any additional openings. And so we use that as a way of creating new opportunities in employment as well as in training.
What are the most common training placements or programs for returning citizens in DC?
Currently, hospitality, construction, and there's a huge interest always in CDL.
I'm sorry, that's not on. There you go.
So hospitality is number one, and
Mhm.
construction number two, and as he said, the huge interest is in a CDL,
Mhm.
but it has a director say that we are trying to work on the CDL program because for this period of time, we don't have that opportunity with these DCIA, but today we have 14 people who are attending the training for CDL.
Oh, you have 10 people who
14
today that are training for CDL.
that are training for
DCIA,
CDL.
yes.
Okay, and
In addition to that, we also participate in job fairs as another way of aiming to get our clients employed.
what's CDL's commercial driver's license seem like a lucrative career that would be ideal for many returning citizens. A number of people are demanding these types of programs. What is the issue with getting more people, more DC residents into CDL training programs?
So it has to has to be a company that is offering the CDL training, and that we have access to placing our people into the training. That is more, because we kind of get a grasp of what individuals are finding to be successful in prison, because CDL, you could tell because individuals that come home want CDL. So most of the time it's connected to somebody that they know got released and was able to secure a CDL. And so our goal is to continue to figure out where CDL training programs exist, pay for some that we can, and to get our people access to those things that they say that they want to do. But everybody don't want to be in construction. Everybody don't want to be in hospitality. Everybody doesn't want to be a CDL driver. And so we take their lead, because what we don't want to do is put them in a situation where they don't want to remain. And we also don't want to burn bridges with employers that we are able to build relationships with.
I agree with that. For the CDL, how you have 14 people in a CDL program now? Right. How's that paid for? Is that paid through the agency?
No, it's not paid through the agency. I'm not sure.
It's a free program. They offer free training for
It's
our
free.
population.
So I don't know
Okay.
where their funding is coming from.
Okay, and so if there is a program that the district would have to pay per student, do you have the budget to do that, or how would you figure that out?
So we are looking to increase the number of individuals that we are able to place in CDL programs because of some programs that we have already allocated funding for that didn't use all of the money. Now we're able to pool some of those funds together to pay for individuals to participate in the CDL program, and that is something that we're currently exploring now.
Okay. Well, let me then move to your budget. Agency's budget is remaining pretty flat. It's not changing much. Does the budget propose give you the resources you need to achieve the goals you've laid out?
So the budget that we have allows us to, so it's twofold. We have I don't know how much unique, but we have a partnership with DHS, right? Where it is a 50-50 split. And so some of the programs that we are allowed to, well, we have more room to create opportunities because it's not so much of a huge strain on our local budget because we can match. So for example, if we want to place 20 people into a CDL program and it's gonna cost $100,000, we will be able to take 50 from local and match it with funding that we have from DHS to place individuals in it. And that comes from federal funding.
Okay. So you, in the proposed budget, you have the budget to meet your goals?
Yes.
Okay. How many vacancies do you have right now?
4.
Do you conduct exit interviews when people leave or step down or are released from their positions?
So typically, MODA does, yes.
Okay, and then what type of feedback or insights do they give to you as the agency director?
It depends on the reasoning. If the person is transferring out to pursue other goals, then that's what it happened. I mean, that's what it is. If there is an exit, and we may discuss with them.
So, I mean, it sounds like you don't get much feedback when people leave the agency, whether they're like fired, leaving on their own.
But that's that's not true. You had about an exit strategy. So typically, if a staff member is exiting, they will give us notice that they're leaving.
I'm sorry, I'm asking about exit interviews. So when somebody leaves, do you talk to them and say, what worked, what didn't work? You know, what do we need to know to be best
So
employees?
MODA conducts our exit interviews, and so if, like the director was saying, if someone transition out and is transferred, and they have recommendations that they would like to provide, that's provided to MOTA, and is given to us if there is some constructive feedback. So we have had in the past individuals who have left and have sent the feedback directly to us, and we've had people on a traditional basis who goes through MOTA, does their exit interviews, and feedback is provided.
Okay. Do you usually get feedback?
Yes.
Okay. So 4 out of 19 is like a fifth of the agency. Why a vacancy rate this high?
So we haven't been,
Get your microphone.
we are doing interviews to fill those positions.
All right. Okay, so those are not currently, no, previously filled positions.
I believe 3 of those, but we can, go ahead.
So we've had some transition. So yes, they were previously filled. And so some of them are outstanding. But yes, we have had some that have, in the past been most of them have been filled. And then, those who are transitioning out, we have some recent vacancies as well.
And so we have interviews, I believe coming up in the next couple of weeks for each vacancy that is currently open.
Okay. We move to another topic, which is these allegations that I mentioned in my opening statement. As you are likely aware, there have been numerous serious allegations of mismanagement at your agency that have been referred to law enforcement and investigatory agencies. In the meantime, I need to ensure that your employees are safe and able to do their jobs. We have heard numerous concerns that people don't feel safe in the office due to incidents that have occurred. We discussed some of this in our performance oversight hearing. Have you made any changes to security since the oversight hearing?
So before that troubles me that we've had this conversation in the hearing and in your office, and it seems as if first of all, I'm almost, now let me not say that. I'm bothered that you would, I have shaped my life. I have transformed my life as a returning citizen, have built an impeccable reputation, not just locally, but internationally. I have done work. I still get called on to do work that I turn down because I am dedicated to serving returning citizens here. And I know my staff almost better than anybody else besides this woman right next to me, my director of operations. And I think that you should always extend me the courtesy of coming to me versus having my staff or your staff communicate with my staff about stuff that have you maybe chasing things that don't exist, right? When I first encountered you, I was like, this gentleman is a champion for returning citizens. But it seems like since you have been oversight over my agency, not just now in housing, but also in public safety. So I was wondering, when you kept us on, when you switched, I thought that things will shift and that it will start seeming beneficial to the population that we serve and the agency that we serve. And I think that it is troubling that in this setting, when the agency that I leave, that you accuse of mismanaging or mishandling money, that earlier you said that you want to make sure that my staff is not retaliated against for speaking out. I don't know if that's because I'm a returning citizen.
Come on.
I don't know.
I'll let you go, but come on.
I don't know.
Pull it back in.
I
Pull it
don't
back
know.
in.
I don't know.
All right.
Because you're saying that my staff is in threat of being retaliated against, and that you having us looked into by law enforcement. So you're basically saying that you believe that I'm doing some criminal activity, and man, that is extremely harmful to the agency, to the residents that I serve, and to me as an
Director,
individual.
I'll
No,
let
no,
you go on for a
but-
while. Nope,
but I'm
Director,
going
you are
off of what you
deflecting. No,
said.
you are deflecting. I asked a question. I have an oversight responsibility. I will fulfill it. If people reach out to my office, my committee with concerns, you know what I have an obligation to do? Look into those concerns. And guess where I have to do them? I have to do them in view, because we don't operate a secret government. That's not how democracy
And I'm-
works. I haven't accused you. I've asked you questions. Just answer the question.
But you have accused me when you say mishandling funds. Who you saying mishandling the funds? It's my agency. Everything lands on me.
Director, have you made any changes to security at your agency since our last hearing?
So we have had, go ahead.
So we have, we have conducted and coordinated, not only with our agency, but with EOM as a whole, a de-escalation training. Because we believe that not only are we responsible for our staff, but we're also responsible for those who come in our office looking for services and hoping not to recidivate. And so we look at how we respond, how we de-escalate ourselves, how we ensure that we're not just looking for outward security, but we're also looking at what are we doing that's going to keep ourselves safe? Because to be honest, security is not the only answer. It's also within ourselves and how we conduct ourselves professionally. And so we did de-escalation training. We also met with DGS, and they have done a threat assessment. They're concerned to have security within our suite. It was not founded based on that threat assessment. We are not going to have our people come from a place of incarceration and then also further police them in a place where they're supposed to come to get services. And so we do not support security being inside our suite, but our security have been phenomenal in responding within a timely manner. If you would like to do any more further investigation to see their response rate, to talk to them, we welcome that. We also are also investing in from our budget into cameras inside the office.
All right, so since the oversight hearing, the de-escalation training is new?
So de-escalation training was always in process. It took us a while to find and to coordinate with DBH to get that implemented within that time frame. But it was in place before the performance hearing.
All right, and cameras will be new. Will that?
So it's not new, they're coming back. They were previously in the suite. And then during the renovations, we were under the impression that they were still there, and then learned recently that they were not there.
All right. Do you believe that employees feel safe or will feel safe with these changes?
We have staff that will feel safe with cameras. We have staff that will feel safe with security inside the suite. We try our best to ensure when anything has escalated, the first persons, especially if we're in-house, that respond or that it comes to support our staff and our individuals is myself and the director, and as well as our supervisors. And so whenever things are slightly elevated, we come to be a standing body and a support, as well as he will, many times the director will go directly to the scene. I will call security and coordinate the rest of the office. And so we also have worked out with our internal security team to get walkie-talkies in the front and the back, and we have explained to our staff where these walkie-talkies are if a situation has escalated.
And please take into consideration, this is not no rampant thing. We have individuals that's coming from serving long terms and short terms of incarceration. Some of them are walking right out of maximum level 4, level 5 security levels, and sometimes presence may be intimidating, or voice levels, right? Sometimes we have individuals that comes in our agency that have mental health challenges. They haven't been on their medication or don't have medication. And so the trainings that she mentioned, in addition to that, we already have one mental health provider that comes into our agency, and their primary goal is to connect those who suffer from mental health issues to get connected to the services that's going to help stabilize them. But in addition to that, their goal is to intervene when there is a crisis, in a mental health crisis with individuals. And we are currently in conversation with like 3 other mental health organizations to see how we can, the days that the current agency isn't in there, that we can have other individuals that help us. And so this isn't something that just created because of the hearing right? This has been something that has always been in the work, because we saw a spike in individuals with mental health issues, and so they might get to screaming. Screaming can come from a variety of things. Again, not on medication. They may have to wait longer because someone to come in and go straight to the person, but we may have a lobby full of people like we traditionally do. And then sometimes it may be a bad day for somebody that's in-house, or an individual may be triggered by a male. It was one client that ended up seeing her that didn't want me in the room because he's triggered by males, right? And so we have all of these different factors that we have to navigate in order to serve our people who are traumatized, who are coming from an environment that has been traumatized, and then to come home into society where they're supposed to figure this stuff out can further trigger them. And so we're always managing how do we create the best opportunity for them to be successful. But this isn't rapid. This isn't happening on a weekly basis. So I don't want you to leave with that perception like this is an ongoing thing.
Okay, I appreciate that. I don't believe that it's an ongoing thing. It sounds like you're aware that there's been an issue or issues that need to be addressed, and you're taking steps to address it for sake of security and staff feeling safe. Is that accurate?
Yeah, within reason.
Staff and clients.
Okay, I mean, sound like we're on the same page. In our performance oversight hearing, we discussed at least one incident of alleged sexual harassment that was reported at your office. What steps have you taken since the performance oversight hearing to ensure that your customers and employees do not experience harassment?
So I don't want to, because we're talking about personnel issues now. And we have taken the necessary steps, followed the guidelines from the SHU on how to address any issue. And what I don't want to do is one of the main things that I was hired to do is to protect the clients that we serve, protect staff. And so I think, as we mentioned, in our oversight hearing, that thing that you mentioned had already been addressed. And I know we said it in the oversight hearing, and we even had that conversation when we met with you privately. So there's no new answer of something that already been dealt with.
Okay. I've heard reports of multiple incidents. I don't know whether it's accurate or not. will you remind us what is what's the sexual harassment policy and procedure if somebody believes that they or somebody else has been a victim of sexual
So
harassment?
Ms. Jordan can speak to that.
So I am one of the EOM shows, so sexual harassment officers. So if a person reports to myself or the director that they feel or have witnessed any form of sexual harassment, then we then escalate it. I am not actively a show in that moment because of my relationship to the staff and the dynamics. And so so we then escalate it to our he is my director, but the director over our agency, who then is also inclusive of MODA and the general counsel, who then also filters, assigns a show, and then the show will reach out directly to those individuals. We will not be in part of, in an investigation then happens. We are not involved in the investigation. We are in the back end when the finding has happened, and the general counsel, the findings is presented to the general counsel, who then presents it to the directors, and then they decide what happens if there is anything that was founded.
But I do want to caution, I think it's, I mean, I don't know the law in this, but I think it's inappropriate to bring speculations or accusations or something that may or may not have happened. And so it puts a negative outlook on my agency when I have no clue on some of the things that you are speaking of that has not been brought to our attention. And so I don't think it's fair for us as an agency, as a first point of engagement for returning citizens, as an agency that is hiring, bringing on new staff, to have this perspective that this is a hostile and demeaning environment. So I will caution you, where it's already happened, you know, when made it public.
To think about the effects.
Huh?
To think about the effects of it.
Yeah, it cautions you to think about the effects of what it is that we're trying to do, what it is that you're saying that you're trying to do, and how that can potentially damage a reputation that we have been able to make crispy clean on advancing returning citizens. And so I just ask you the caution of that, because we've heard some things too, right? About coming from your office, from you, calling our staff, having a relative in our agency that feels empowered, that feels that they don't have to follow the chain of command. So all of this stuff is speculation. You say you have you received a tip or something, but we'll have somebody that say you are kin to them, they have contact.
Director,
So I'm
let
just
me
saying.
pause you.
So
All
I
right,
just want-
I'm letting you go on a long time because I don't want you to feel cut off. But couple things. One, I'm deeply invested in this agency. When I got to the council, this agency had a fraction of the number of employees, a fraction of the resources. And I fought to increase this many times over the objection of the administration to get more resources to the agency for returning citizens. What I want to see is this agency progress. I want to make sure there are no issues. When there are issues, with proportion, the number of complaints, the complaints I get from the number of people in your agency in proportion to the total number of people in the agency is incredibly high. That is cause for concern, and I have to look into those concerns. Now, I guess you're feeling a kind of way and you wanted to let the public know that there's a claim that I have a family member at the agency. I don't. All right. This is DC. A lot of people call themselves your cousin because they know you from, back in the day. I don't. So rein that back in. We're going to get back
It was
to,
speculation, like you did, speculation. So that's all I don't know, because this is the first time I've heard you respond to that, right?
you never asked me.
I know it's not the first
Have
time
you asked
you've
me
heard it.
before?
I haven't
All
asked
right.
you before.
So All
But
right.
it's been said, I mean, from an individual, right?
Yeah, you, today.
No,
So-
no, it's not just me. I'm saying this individual,
Okay, look, I'm wrapping that up because it's not accurate.
right? And
All
so
right.
some of the things that you're saying are
This
not
is my
accurate.
hearing director. I have an oversight responsibility. If you don't like the questions, I'm not sure what to say. But if you were in my seat, I hope that you would look into the issues as well, if you care about the agency. And so that when you talk about who is hurting the agency, me asking oversight questions based on issues that are coming to me, I have an obligation to do that.
I just
We're gonna
asked,
get back on track, Director. I'm gonna keep asking questions. Please answer the questions. ORCA is tasked with distributing public resources to clients, including transportation stipends, housing vouchers, and other assistance. How does ORCA ensure that there are no conflicts of interest in the distribution of those resources?
what do you mean by a conflict of interest of distribution of those resources? What do you mean? So I'm clear.
I can pull up a definition of conflict of interest, and then we can use it as a common definition.
No, that ain't, I know what the definition means. That's not what I'm asking you. When you said how they being distributed without a conflict of interest, I'm trying to see if there's some specific that you're asking.
Director, does the agency do anything to have any policies with respect to conflicts of interest in the distribution of resources?
So as she looked for that, that probably it was gonna be something else that I have to add. So when it comes to resources, our goal is always to make sure that that our staff members are not putting people over people. So our goal, our job at Morca is if a person is coming to housing resources is something that they're looking for, they are going through the housing resource process. Because the district is so small, as you had mentioned earlier, that it is not uncommon that somebody know may come into the office seeking services. But it is definitely prohibited that they would place any individual over top of, well, you could do it, over top of someone else because of their relationship with them.
All right, so the process starts with an initial assessment that allows all applicants to be put on a housing list based on need. Is that the process?
So everyone that comes into the agency that stresses that housing or states that housing is a need is placed on the list.
Okay, and you mentioned there sometimes somebody might know someone. Do they recuse themselves?
Correct.
All right. And after somebody is put on the housing list, MORCA conducts a detailed assessment to deem the level of priority. Is that the process?
Correct.
And then if they are deemed a high priority, then you consider them for a housing voucher application submission to the DC Housing
Incorrect.
Authority.
So after the assessment is done, their name is added to the list and it has to go in front of a housing board that is made up of MORCA staff and different workforce outreach in different departments of MORCA so that they come to a consensus on if this individual moves, qualifies to move forward with housing. So as I mentioned earlier, a large majority of the individuals that come to MORCA has housing as instability as a need. But if we can put you on a track to where you're able to be employed, where you can advance to permanent housing, so we're looking at when we talk about if this person is suitable or meets that there are no other avenues that we can connect them to that's going to create long-term stability for them. And then that is what the housing board work together to determine. And those that are determined to move forward to having the opportunity of receiving one of ORCA's vouchers, then it is submitted to DC Housing Authority, who makes the determination if the individual qualifies. But to ensure that there is no conflict of interest, that is why we pull from these different departments versus allowing one individual to decide who gets housing vouchers.
And so the board makes a collective decision?
Well, I will give an example. So like you said, DC is small. So I have, and many of us have family members who come through the office. I had a recent family member who came through the office. We were currently out of a supervisor's, but with one of my case managers, she would present to me the cases before she presents to the board. With the one that was my family member, I told her I cannot give her any advice. One, I'm a social worker, so I have ethical responsibilities outside of this DC government. And so I accused myself of even supporting her with the recommendations that I would traditionally do with any other client. When the case was presented, I told our supervisor, hey, I can't sit on this case. I have a dual relationship with one of the people that's going to be presented, as well as one of the other people that are presented comes to speak to me weekly, and I don't think I could be unbiased. So we constantly stress to our staff to accuse yourself if you feel like you cannot be unbiased during the different processes. That is a conversation that we have stated on recorded meetings. Our housing board meetings are also recorded, so you could see who was currently there and who made a vote based on who was presented. We came up with this process to eliminate the rumors that we were doing anything, or that anything that was happening was unethical, and that there was a check and balance system. And so our case managers can never sit on the board because they are usually those who are presenting, but those who do are case outreach, our outreach specialists, two or three of our peer navigators, as well as the head of the board is Ms. Sylvie Munga, who is our workforce specialist. I have sat in as a voting member and as well as the director.
I appreciate it. This is why it's important to have these conversations publicly. If I have this conversation outside of this hearing, nobody's satisfied. Everybody has a different view of what the reality is. What about the transportation subsidies? Are there measures in place to prevent misuse or appearance of misuse of transportation subsidies?
So we currently had two forms of transportation subsidy, Smart Trips and Promise Rides. And so initially, when with housing, with transportation, our goal has always been, how do we help our clients to reacclimate back into the community without feeling the need to jump a rail, to do anything that will place them in a track to recidivate. And so when we first got the Promise Rides, we had it open to returning citizens that are connected to our agency. And you were allowed up to 5 free cab rides a week. We turned into a hotline, right? And so we went through that number pretty quickly. And so then we placed a pause to figure out, all right, how can we make this more impactful and more in line with making sure that individuals are participating in training, making sure individuals that come from the halfway house can have a cab ride, because the Volunteers of America only pay for the MARC train. It doesn't give them money to get from the train to navigate the district. So we were once having them, they had the ability to get a Promise Ride to take them from there to MORCA, where we will provide them a Smart Trip card so they can navigate around. And so that is how we initially done that. It was just open to all returning citizens, but it got wow. And so now we pull back and it's connected more so halfway house individuals that have been released, I think within 60 days. Individuals that have just started employment where they can get it up to 2 months, well, that is the smart trips, because the promise rise we haven't brought back on. And so those are things that we have put in place in order to ensure that individuals were utilizing the smart trips or the promise ride to meet the need. And so before the promise ride was put on pause, there started being verification of where if they were going to meet with their parole officer, we just ensure things like that. So again, it was loosely when it first started, but we started implementing different measures to make sure it is meeting the needs of the clients that we serve.
I appreciate that. I fought very hard for the smart trip cards, passed the bill, got it funded, and did a lot of work to make sure the agency could actually distribute them, which was not happening for some time.
So
what measures are in place to prevent any misuse of transportation subsidies?
if I answer that, first I want to say we appreciate you putting in those measures, but for the last 2 years, we have been utilizing parts of our local funds to cover the smart trips, as we had that conversation with you previously about the 100,000 that you had put in for. We couldn't find it once you asked us to transfer over. So we've been using funding from our local budget and from our collaboration to fund the smart trips.
Yeah, we've scrubbed to look where the funding, what happened during the transition from Department of Employment Services, and we haven't been able to find it. So to hold up the integrity and to address the barrier, we have done that. But for the integrity of the program, so we, when an individual gets, they are allotted only three smart trips when they come into the office, and they can receive it 3 times within 3 months. And so the individual, the director and I hold the smart trips. So starting even just back with like when we are procuring it, it's 100,000 for 3,125. We have a book that we have, one that we keep when I or the director gives it to one of our staff. They have to sign how many of the smart trips that I count them, then I have them count them, and they sign off of how many that they received. They then have, when the individual comes in from being put on a list, the individual then signs, and we put the SKU number that's on the back of the smart trip on all 3 cards on a form. They then sign that they received it. So, and it's a picture of their ID to verify that that individual is a DC resident, is eligible for our service. And so it's a multi-layered a checks and balance system. So we have them, we give them to our staff, they count it, they then sign it, they distribute it to our clients.
I appreciate that. Employees from every agency we have oversight over come to us about issues in their agencies, and that's happened in the previous committees that I've chaired as well. And I want to be very clear that it is unlawful and completely unacceptable for anyone to face retaliation due to a disclosure to this committee or other appropriate investigatory agency, because I never want employees to worry about what will happen if they speak to the committee, particularly the Committee of Jurisdiction.
If I may, I want to assure you that we are not going to retaliate or have not retaliated against anyone. That is not how we operate. Our staff majority are returning citizens, and the others are closely related in some capacity or another of returning citizens. What we require of our staff is to carry out the job duties that are assigned. That will not change, that will not be weakened, that will not be discouraged, regardless of anything. Nobody is going to be treated any different today, tomorrow, unless they present themselves where we have to say, hey, can't do that, right? So retaliation for me as a returning citizen, that doesn't, I get the what you mean by, but that will never happen from ORCA. That is not how we operate. We don't operate to do get back. We operate to do good work and save people lives, because people that come into our agency, some of them are making a decision by walking that door. If this doesn't work out, I'm going back to the streets. And so we need our team at its best, so that you don't have to worry about retaliation. That ain't how I live my life.
Excellent. I appreciate it. That's important for people to hear. There's frequently a concern when people reach out to the committee, not just specific to this agency, any agency. When they reach out with concerns, there's often, they feel like they're taking a risk. But the city is not better off if people worry about that. So I always want to make sure people feel like they can reach out to us. And I think people across every agency feel like we take their concerns seriously. They're not always right, but we will always look into them. Those are all the questions that I have. Director, I want to thank you for being here, you and your team, for the work that you all do. As we close, if anyone is interested in keeping up with the committee's work and finding ways to get involved, please sign up at robertwhiteatlarge.com so we can be in touch with updates. The record for this hearing will be open for 1 week from today until the close of business on Tuesday, April 16th at 5:30 p.m. Anyone who's interested in submitting written testimony for the office record, for the official record, can do so via our hearing management system, LIMS, and that is at lims.dccouncil.gov/hearings, lims.dccouncil.gov/hearings. The business before this committee is finished for today. The time is 3:54 p.m. and this budget oversight hearing is adjourned.